and welcome to episode 240 of the FReality Podcast. We've got quite a unique show on for you today. A little less news, more bleeding hearts and shouting at each other. We're all friends here. Let me give you a little intro to what's the jam today. First up, move over, Oprah. Reviewers are getting paid by the Mafia to push quests this holiday season. And forget installing games. Go sit on the Golden Throne and enjoy Atomic Heart, Starfield, and Forza Horizon with cloud streaming tech that aims to challenge your need for a PC. Load up those incendiary rounds because we've got a special guest today who joins us for a hearty debate. I cannot wait. And Sean Murray from Hello Games had a big ol' surprise for us at the Game Awards. With hot cocoa and marshmallows in hand, Jose is going to warm us up with the latest VR releases, which you should pay attention to this holiday season. That means it's time for our intros, and let's get started with our guest and get this show on the road. This fine gentleman joins us today as a mercenary for hire, a guest crew member of FReality. He doesn't just have chill, he's got chili crunch. Known for his seemingly unending contributions to VR through the medium of hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades, the King Sausage feels like kin to me for his bold, no bullshit tweets, 300 or so devlogs sharing the journey of dev life with us, mere plebeians, and more. Crew and chat, please welcome Anton Hand. Anton, welcome to the show.
Howdy, howdy.
Awesome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Right.
This is a milestone. This is
Has
an
it
absolute
really been
milestone.
300 devlogs? Like crumble to dust.
Well, it's not just that. I want to first pass an early congratulations here just for surviving this long, because I feel like that in of itself, like in VR land, is an accomplishment. Like that's a big deal.
And then on top of that, the way you do it, it's like another accomplishment in its own part. You know, like that's something, and I've said that multiple times on the podcast already. That's something whenever we talk about, you know, your game or you as a person or whatever kind of tweet that you stirred up, like it's always something that I really admire in the way that you go about things. Is you know, like you're no bullshit. You know, this is what you want, this is what you do, and whatever else happens, you know, that's something I really admire. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Keeping voice. Sorry, go ahead. You're
fine.
No, I was just saying that keeping voice to authenticity, especially when you are a builder, is something that's very hard to keep a hold of. As somebody that builds a company, it's something that when you see people that are unapologetically themselves and still be able to build and create, it's like exactly. Absolute respect.
And as you know, fellow creators in various forms here, you know, there's a lot of skeletons of the last decade. There's a lot of people who fell off. You know, lemmings went off the cliff and aren't around anymore. Gave up, went back to flat gaming, whatever it is. But in addition to that, I might be the first one to congratulate you on the upcoming milestone you're about to hit, which is 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is pretty mental.
Very, it sometimes feels a little bit, what is it like? Is it Zeno's paradox where I'm just going to keep approaching it, but never quite touching it? But yeah.
I hope we can help. Because that is, that's really special. It's that balancing act. Like the fact that you can be a game dev, put your full heart, blood, soul, sweat, tears, all of that into that, but also still kind of keep people informed as you're going through the journey, because then it inspires the next generation of developers, frankly, to kind of say, oh, I can do that. If he can spin 3 plates, I can certainly at least spin 1, you know. But from thumbnails to the videos you've been doing, the humor in your Upload VR special last year, you know, tickled me silly. So yeah, thanks for not getting lost in the YouTube game and, you know, focusing so heavily on a game. I can appreciate a man who doubles down on a project and continues to do so, which is hats off to that.
Thanks very much.
I wanted to invite you to the show, and also, just like we do for the others here, ask if you've got any, you know, particular highlights from the last 2 weeks, whether that's trips to the post office or, you know, those refinements you've got coming in for your Christmas drop.
Well, I mean, that obviously there's all the game stuff, but I would have to say, but you can probably tell from the volume about. I've talked about it on my Twitter. I have my condiment journeys has been. I've been iterating on this chili crisp adjacent condiment, basically since the middle of COVID lockdown. and just recently finally figured out how to produce it in larger batches without screwing it up or having the flavors turn out poorly. So it ended up being my big Christmas gift to a whole bunch of folks this year. It was a delight to do, and I'm actually doing like a small giveaway with a couple jars of it on my YouTube channel.
That's awesome. People should definitely check that out. Like, I'm a guy who likes the spice, and that when I saw it, I was like, oh, that looks good. But can you describe to me? Because I don't know what chili crisp is. Like, how do you, I saw someone eating it with like a dessert. Do you eat it to spice a pasta meal? Like, where do you use it? Breakfast cereal?
So it's a complete flavor sauce. Doesn't need anything else with it. So you could take something that's a very sort of neutral base food, like I've made scrambled eggs, or I blanched some cabbage, or
Oh.
steamed like boiled some dumplings, and just toss it in like a tablespoon or so, and it'll volatilize all of the aromas and just give it a light coating. I continue to try it on many more things. You can like drizzle a little bit on pizza even, and it's
Like a
just gonna
dry
add.
rub then, or
No, it's
like
it's 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 a chunky oil suspension sort of thing. It's it's
I love
like it's
that.
I
you
get it
know
now.
it's like a chili oil with stuff in it.
Yeah.
But the ratio of like of solids and bits in it, because there's some fried shallot in there, there's chunks of peanut, and things like that.
See, this
So it's
is
not like chili oil where it's mostly oil.
this is what I find
is
so
so hungry.
interesting about you. Like, a lot of people have the idea of like, I should try this, but nobody goes like all out. And like, I have it up on the stream as well so people can see it as well. It's like, it's not just, this looks like something that comes out of like, like a boutique superstore, with like the little thing that is printed on with the design of the black and white. Like, you don't like cut corners with even making this, and I
Yeah.
think that just speaks for you. Yeah, that's amazing.
Well,
Listen.
it is a bit of a sickness, because I have this terrible tendency with my hobbies to turn them into work. Like, I bring the full logics and energy
Right.
of as though
Oh,
it was my
man.
job, and I do it without realizing that I've done it frequently. Like, I did this with Warhammer a number of years ago, where I got back into the hobby. I was like, this is really fun, and then started building my army. And then around that time, the company Games Workshop that was doing this nationwide build an army contest with like 5 winners, and I just went super hard into it, and I ended up actually being one of the 5 winners of their like inner circle
Oh,
army
wow.
contest.
Wow.
I got flown to Dallas, and I'm hanging out with the other guys who like these other 4 hobbyists are like, I do a new army every year. It has taken me that long to build up to doing them this fast and doing them this fast. And I was like, oh yeah, I just got back into the hobby for the first time in like 12 years. And they like all looked at me like I was a madman. Like, what do you mean you went from cold to this? And I was like, it's a sickness. I don't know.
But that's
Yeah,
good.
That's
my
Like,
fault.
awesome.
Yeah.
Because like, even if you look, I mean, you're a game developer and you released a batch of, chili cheat code sauce. You released that on Twitter. It got 121 likes, which is like kind of crazy already and there's like a ton of people in the comments. This looks so bomb. Can you please give up the recipe? Do you have any plans to release the recipe? Am I able to buy one off of you? It's that kind of like, I mean, I don't know how you do it. I'm just amazed by it every time it happens when you do one of these things, because you had it as well with the you've been really into like the Wagyu beef and the meats, and there's been like so many tweets about people like just asking for your opinion on like the specific recipe or this and that, which it's just mind blowing how much traction that you get from things just trying out.
Well, the thing that I really like about this in particular, and this isn't just limited to Anton either, is when you see someone on the internet, oftentimes we get trapped into thinking about their single mechanism or mode of being. Like, seeing someone who truly is like multimodal, but also able to show that off with prowess, which is what kind of Rowdy's saying, right? It's a great example. I really do think it's a great example for people who can be not just one thing. Like, you can be a kind of a one-man band to some extent, right? Or lady. And yeah, with that, it's probably a good time that I move on to the next guest, or we're going to be here for 4 hours. So, or the next person on the list. All right. There's a toothless, homeless, bearded guy who's lying in a gutter somewhere in Belgium. For Rowdy had to get on that plane to Freedom Poutine and needed a seat for his wife. What a good husband. He did what he had to do to get over the pond. Now their fellow Canucks settle down He's a very smart lad, a strong believer in plant life. It's Rowdy. How you doing, Rowdy?
I'm doing all right. I'm so excited for today. Like, as you can probably tell already. I haven't done a lot of VR in the last 2 weeks, but I did. I mean, I've been working quite a bit, and I realized that for actually yesterday, what happened is that Google DeepMind, and I know that we talked about it just a couple of podcasts ago. They did it again. You know, we talked about AlphaFold, we talked about TensorFold, AlphaZero, and now again they've done something which is called Fun Search, which is basically they've integrated a large language model named Cody based on their Google Palm, and they've integrated that on their AlphaFold, Alpha Tensor, you know, those kind of things, and they've now managed to solve a math problem that nobody is able to solve before. It's a very weird kind of math problem. The math problem itself is not really interesting, but it's one of the I wouldn't say the first time, but it's one of those indications where, because people always say with large language models, they just predict words. You know, it's just word sequences. They're just predicting the next word in the sequence. They don't generate stuff really. But with, you know, smart trickery and smart play with these kind of algorithms, it can now also come up with new ideas or new approaches on things that we hadn't really seen before, which I think is super interesting. Because we're slowly progressing towards that way of like where we're using AI not just to generate things that are based on a lot of input, but to generate things that nobody has ever done before. Because this is a math problem that has been, you know, even mathematicians can't even agree on how to solve it. And now this algorithm, of course, it produced a lot of garbage. It's that they had to throw away a lot of the code that it produced, but there were certain parts within that code which were extremely valuable, and that eventually helped in solving that specific problem. Which I think
quite encouraging, because it's a catalyst now. Like, we knew this was coming. Rowdy keeps us abreast of these kinds of evolutions on this side of life. And the reason why, for someone who's like listening in the first time and going, "What the feck is he on about?" One of the reasons that excites me about this is that one of those problems that we want AI to solve in the future, and with these models, is, hey, you got a flat game? Would you mind converting that to VR for me, please? Or give me the holodeck experience that was promised so many years ago. You know, can you just go and create this up in the same way that you would with like Midjourney or ChatGPT? Go create me an image, right? Show me a lady on a sandy beach holding a can of Coke because I want to create a Coke ad. So this is honestly awesome. I started to see the headlines for it. You know,
I think it's a tool to use for more creativity. That's how I see it. To kind of like, you know, use a tool like that, because I don't think that we're anywhere near that it can replace. Like for example, I don't think that we're anywhere near to like having something like you say. You know, having asking a question and convert this game into virtual reality. I'm sure Anton can talk about VR development a little bit more than I can, but I think there's a lot more intricacies that are needed to be solved. But what I find interesting about this part, it's what Google DeepMind is focusing on. I think that's a right focus. It's core problems that will, for example, they did it with TensorFold. They produce an algorithm, or they solved a problem that made processors and computers maybe 50 times faster. You know, these kind of solutions where we're using AI in order to try and come up with solutions to problems that we don't even know how to solve or how to approach, and then improving, you know, computing power, improving matrix computations, and those kind of things. I think that is where a lot of the value comes. So I'm super happy that, you know, that Google DeepMind, because of course they had the Gemini release, which was, I saw it in the chat as well, you know, it's a big release, but that's more like the commercial kind of stuff. You know, that's what a lot of people and developers are going to be using. But the fundamental stuff is what I find super interesting, and Google DeepMind is really focusing on that. It's not going to solve any. Nobody cares about this math problem, because the math problem is like, how many dots can I put on a graph plot to get a straight line before I get like a straight line? It's not a problem that you go like, oh yeah, that's actually going to solve my Christmas shopping. You know, like that's not going to do it. You know, like it's a very fundamental kind of way of thinking, and having solutions to those kind of ways will eventually propel research further. And I think that is super interesting.
I love that.
The part for me where I get concerned about it is, at a point, we have to start to trust the model. Like it'll go beyond the point where a human can validate the work. You know, like I imagine with this mathematical
I have
solution.
very strong opinions on that, but I think model evaluation and model validation is something that we have not solved whatsoever.
Nope.
And also big companies are working on that, and transparency in models is very important because you can't have an algorithm make a decision for, you know, a group of people, even for an individual. It doesn't work like that. You can't just, you know, get an MRI scan done and then the computer outputs this person has whatever disease.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
I think human verification
even
is
if the algorithm is 99.79% correct, that won't work.
I won't stop anyone from using
it.
Yeah,
That's where the dystopia comes. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily the fundamental flaw of the technology.
Yeah.
It's our unwillingness to be honest about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, for sure. 100%. I love how you formulate
That's what
that.
It's so
That's what I
eloquent.
like about
Fucking hell.
Perplexity. There's that website Perplexity that at least it gives you list sources in the information it gives you, so you can kind of check quickly without having to Google, is this information accurate? It's like, oh, and sometimes it does. It still gives you the information, but you go and look at its sources and it says something completely
Right.
different. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, but at least they're there to check quickly without having to. It sounds so first, you know, oh, what a terrible problem to have. I have to open a new tab to check Google to check this information.
I think the fear.
But-
I think the fear related to what you just mentioned, Adam, is it's really more the what you can't really verify because it hasn't been invented, right? That's my biggest fear because I've been kind of reading and learning as much as I possibly can about AI, and one of the things that I'm looking at are startups that are now using these technologies and these breakthroughs that Rowdy just mentioned to make up like new physics particles, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I'm thinking about is, what if you create the wrong particle that should even be in this existing dimension, and you know we don't have a way of verifying its catastrophic potentials until we test it out.
Until it's there.
Well,
Yeah.
we do that now even without AI. So
Yeah, exactly.
We create,
That
we
was the whole
create
atom
micro
bomb.
black holes to see what is going to happen with it, you know?
I wonder
mean,
if this will
wasn't-
destroy.
My favorite anecdote on that line is like listed on the "this might happen" risks when we detonated the first nuke was this
Yeah.
might just light the entire atmosphere on fire and we all suffocate
Yeah.
immediately.
Just still
And they're
try
like,
it,
yes,
though.
but we gotta see though. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know for sure.
I, for one, have been ready for the AI uprising since Metal Gear Solid came out. I don't know when that came out. 1997, I think.
I don't think there's a readiness state. I think one morning something is going to happen newsworthy. Whatever it is, like, you know, everyone on the planet goes to check their email and just none of it's working all of a sudden. What's happening? You know, everyone's shut out of their banks, and it's like, oh right, AI decided it wanted to take away the rights for us to use the internet
It's like
anymore. You know,
like that story, the paperclip generator, right?
I love
talked
that
about
just
story.
think of that. Just wake up and just Denver has been turned into paperclip. It's like, that was faster than I thought. Honestly, I thought we would at least had a day where it was just a city block first.
That is that's a very personal thing to me because my son is called Denver, so I imagine my boy getting turned into paperclips, which
It's clippy.
Mom would not be happy about. Anyway, all right, let's move on. Thank you, Rowdy, for your again science spotlight. As usual, I'll just call it that. All right, Adam. X marks the spot. This smelly old lady has too many cats, covered in dander when she goes to the supermarket. The people, they're real. The smell, that awful smell, just doesn't appeal. That's a bit harsh, so let me take that back. Adam's a festive lass, has a good taste in glasses, and thanks to Meta pushing AI updates, might just get smarter yet. Happy holidays, Adam.
Like following Rowdy, because then he's, you know, science, all this smart stuff, and I'm here to talk about cats. Like,
Well, you went there. I watched
I
it.
did, yeah. Actually, there've been a lot of animals in VR games lately. I finished Arizona Sunshine 2
Nice.
probably last week or so, but then the bigger thing that
Oh,
everybody
so that's the code word. That's what you meant last podcast.
Mare's Mona Sunshine 2. Yeah, that was Arizona Sunshine 2, in case you didn't get that last time. But I wasn't under NDA technically, but I was like, whatever. Anyway, cats. Neko Atsume came out, the mobile app from like 11 years ago where you collect cats. That finally came out for the Quest, so I was able to get early access to that because I guess I look like a cat person. And it's It's cute. It is very cute, but there's just not. It is literally like you took the mobile game and put it in VR. In that, you feed the cats, you wait for the cats to come, you play with them, and then that's kind of it. There's mixed reality and hand tracking, which you could tell that they really leaned in hard in that direction.
Right.
And but it's not a game that you're like, yeah, I'm gonna spend 2 hours. Well, maybe I don't know. I'm not meaning to judge. Maybe some people could spend 2 hours just kind of sitting in a room playing with cats, but it's very limited. I feel like there's a lot more that they could have done to make it for VR. Like when you feed the cats, for example, it's kind of just like in the mobile game where you like do the cursor pointer on the food bowl, a UI pops up, and then it's like fill bowl. Like, no, I want to take the bag and fill that damn bowl myself. And there's even the like shop inventory or inventory in general is just UI. So you're just scrolling through stuff when it's like, why can't I just have it on a shelf where I can take the things off physically? Or it's cute, and it definitely has the spirit of the mobile game for anyone who's nostalgic and played the crap out of that. But it's not. It could have been better for VR. So,
And
but
it seems daunting to me, the thought that you could take a mobile game. I mean, a flat game, bring it to VR, fair enough. That's a big enough leap. Like that's almost the canyon-sized jump. But a mobile game, there have really only been a few successful conversions that I remember. One was the now defunct, and I don't think you can even play it anymore, Mountain Goat Mountain, which was a great like arcade game where you were jumping around, kind of like Q*bert, like back in the day. That was really, really good. And then the second one was, I'm not remembering the name of it, but there was a zombie game which was kind of Left 4 Dead style, something 2. Again, not Arizona Sunshine, not Dead Space, something along those lines. And it was really good. The problem is multiplayer unlocked at like level 6 in the game, so you had to spend an hour and a half to even unlock the multiplayer to then play with your buddy. But so it's possible you can have a good mobile game. What do you want from a pet game like that? Like what do you think, aside from the interactivity, the actual VR parts, like what's the part to you that like would really speak to your heart?
I don't know how one would do this, but it needs some kind of progression. Like I want to be able to, I want to come back, if that makes sense. So I need to like, if you do X amount of things, or I mean, because Neko Atsume kind of does that. It's like, when the cats use your furniture, they'll give you fish, and the fish currency you can use to unlock stuff. But I need it to be, I need a better progression system in a pet game. I don't know if that's too much to ask. Maybe people don't want a progression system in a pet game. Maybe that sounds way too serious. But like as it is, the only time I go on Neko Atsume is like maybe before I play a longer game just to check up on the cats. Like I'm not staying in there for many, many hours and being like, yeah, this is the best thing ever. It's cute, but it's just check up on cat, do the feeding UI, and leave. But I did learn a lot of interesting things from the comments, in that people love nostalgia, and it was able to hit that audience of non-VR users that are like, oh my God, this is in VR now? Maybe I'll buy a headset just for this. And I'm like, whoa, hold on, it's not that great. But yeah, so many people wanted to buy a headset for this game. They were so nostalgic. They loved cats. They loved the mixed reality. Or some people that sold their headsets were upset that they sold their headsets now. It was interesting to go through the comments, and a lot of people didn't realize, they probably don't realize that a lot of games can be played on the Quest 2 and the Quest 3, because I got a lot of people asking, will it work on my Quest 2? And it's like, yes, it's just the pass-through will be black and white. But it was very insightful. I mean, some of the comments were dumb, of course. Is this free, or is this money? But the other ones were interesting.
Is this real money?
Is this paid? Do I have to give money? It's weird. TikTok is wild, but it's interesting. So if you ever take the chance, just go through that TikTok and look at some of the comments and to see how like nostalgia, mixed reality, and cute animals. Boom, that's a successor for. Because even I cheated. I did use the referral system because I was like, yeah, I want that store game money, and I got at least $90 worth of referrals just from Neko Atsume alone.
Look at
Jeez.
that.
I'm kind of embarrassed.
Clever
by
girl.
It
Clever
girl.
Clever girl.
Yeah, you got to show off this she's got a lovely festive jumper. Sweater, I suppose you'd call it here. And yeah, it's got a velociraptor on it. Says "Clever Girl" and has the gates of Jurassic Park. What a good pick.
Which is handy because in case of Velociraptor attack, I've got a SPOS 12 back here. So
Holy shit!
we match.
Yay! So festive.
What wasn't that the shotgun in
In
shoot,
Jurassic Park.
yeah, but aside, I was thinking of Guy Ritchie's Snatch. In Snatch, they have it as well. Spot 12.
It's an anti-aircraft cannon.
That's the one.
Oh, man.
That's the one. My God, man, you've got a legit one right there. Well, Adam, thanks very much.
I mean, it's not a real one.
I wouldn't put it past you if you had an arsenal.
The actual SPOS 12 is a piece of junk. I would never waste the money with how expensive a real one would be. It is not actually a good shotgun.
How much is a gun like that? I'm curious.
Yeah.
10 grand or something?
Yeah, I probably. I mean, it would depend on the condition. Like when you've got something like that is hard to acquire, limited series, whether or not it's actually like mint or comes in the box, you're going to have a huge range in price, especially for stuff that getting spare parts is a pain in the butt.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
This is a window into a universe that I certainly don't go into often, but now imagining someone who like a collector, like someone who collects, like, I don't know, Funko Pops or magazines, to buy a gun and then just leave it in the box seems very odd to me. Like, at least mount the thing or put it in a case above the mantelpiece. You know?
even more, like there's a term within like gun collecting communities called safe queen. People will buy a gun they really like, they'll like pull it out, they'll look at it, they'll be like, that's neat, and then very carefully store it in their gun safe because it's temperature controlled and is less likely to corrode. So it's not even just that they haven't taken it out of the box, no one ever sees it. It's just in an air sealed locked environment. And that's just, I only buy anything that I'm willing to treat poorly because I'm too lazy to store things in good
Yep.
condition. So
Oh,
I feel that.
God, I love that. All right, well, here we go. Once upon a time, we had a mic on the show. But oh, where did that mic go? Jose took out a hammer and started to hit. Microphone 1, mic 2, mic 3. Holy shit. Parts flying everywhere. It's all got to go. We need the perfect mic for this Miami tech bro. So dear VR Oasis, please do mind your head. This guy's got a vendetta against bad mics and a shiny new bobsled. He's Jose the VR tech, and just like Santa, he'll chuckle until the moment he pulls out an AR, and that's when you know Tech Santa just buckled.
Or like I should say, ho, ho, ho. It's like, yo, yo, yo this time. What's up, you guys?
Say, how's it going, my man?
Oh, man, busy. Super, super busy. I actually just got back into Florida like 4 hours ago. So I literally like landed, haven't unpacked, got straight to the podcast. I've been super busy, but I had my laptop with me, and I unfortunately didn't have much VR with me. So I've been focusing on revisiting games. So I did a lot of DLC. So I finally got to play the Phantom Liberty DLC for Cyberpunk 2077,
Sick.
which so good.
I started playing Cyberpunk as well because it was on discount so much. I was like, I'm just gonna like.
The DLC
I haven't
I
done
think
that
was also
much,
on
but,
sale.
yeah.
But dude, it's so good. I won't spoil too much about the DLC, but it almost feels like a full-fledged game. I thought it was gonna be like 5 or 6 hours. I also did before that the final. I'm a nerd, so I'm playing the Final Fantasy 7. I forgot what they called it. Some crazy DLC.
Yeah.
Afterbirth, Retrograde, something. But it's some DLC for the upcoming game. So I played that. That was like 5 hours. So I was expecting something similar with the Phantom Liberty DLC. Ended up being like, I think like 12, 15 hours.
Wow.
Haven't finished it yet. Yeah, it's a full-fledged game. It's like, okay.
Were you playing on the go, or is this at home? Kind of like, 'cause
No,
I always
on the go.
remember
At
your
the airport, Xbox controller, and my laptop. Pretty much the entire time at hotel. Yeah, I didn't have
because
much of
once
my tech.
upon a time, Jose told us and showcased a crazy system with like a mobile PS5 that you could have a suitcase. And, oh my God, with a
still got
screen
the-
that
yeah,
pops
no.
out. That thing is nuts. Yeah.
just get a Steam Deck at this point.
Well, listen, only for the PS5 exclusives, right? So I'm a Final Fantasy hardcore nerd. So when the new, I think 16 came out, I had the PS5 portable with me at the airport. People thought I was a maniac bringing that thing with me, but
Well, you are.
I love my game. Well, I am, exactly. So doing a lot of that, and it honestly was my saving grace of sanity because a little bit insight into my company, 60% of my staff is female. So we had a lot of female staff members in our team, and there has been an infection that has been plaguing my team and my company, and it's the Taylor Swift bug. And it's
Oh, I thought I was going in a whole different direction.
This is not what I
I
was
know
expecting.
it is a virus. Like, you don't understand the hold that this woman's voice has over my team. It has affected the male team members of my team. It has affected me. I know most of her
Is it a new
music now
album?
through osmosis.
What's happening?
What's up?
Is it a new album is out? I haven't really plugged into Taylor
Christmas
Swift in
special?
several.
I think she's touring, right?
It's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. They do charm bracelets. They recite the lyrics by heart. This is their god. I've accepted it. You know, it's an intense movement that there's nothing else that I've seen before.
She pulled off that recent thing where she went like direct to, I think it was like AMC,
Yep.
did just a direct deal with one movie theater chain for showing her tour as a movie, and it like blew out box office sales the week that it released compared to like anything else. And it has the movie studios absolutely freaked out because it's like it's a tour video / pseudo documentary in a way. And instead of going through a studio system and having a distributor that is, you know, part of their vertical integration, she just went right there.
Straight to the audiences.
I bet a bunch of other big pop, like she created a new model for it that is going to lessen the amount of power and control they have over the entire theater system.
Right.
Clever.
That's
good.
Clever
These
girl.
are the conversations that these are the conversations we're having. Like, I am learning every day about how powerful of a business titan Taylor Swift is.
Oh,
and
she is.
how
Yeah.
it is nuts. I think she got like Times Person of the Year, and I'm like, well, like, listen, if this is our new business daddy, we'll take it, right? So,
Wow, I have to
so
say,
lots of gaming and lots of Taylor Swift.
I don't think we've had such an eclectic intro to the podcast ever. This has been a very interesting run-in. And welcome back, Jose. Where were you, if you're allowed to say?
I was actually on the West Coast. I was in California for a day. I was having some meetings, planning some stuff that I'll talk about closer in January. San Francisco event called the IMSH. It's an immersive summit. We'll talk more about that medical field.
Nearer to
lots
it.
of cool VR stuff that we're going to be showcasing there. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, you're always a jet setter hopping back and forth, so thanks for making the show today. It's very Jose of you. And
I mean, we got a legend, have to.
yeah, absolutely. We got to stop throwing. We're gonna have to get tough now on each other, right? All the love we're pushing that to one side, and we're getting into the ring soon. So, chat, thanks for coming to the show. It'll be having a good interactive segment a little bit later on, so I want to encourage you to chip in questions at that time. We're gonna be having a kind of a live debate here with this 5-person crew now. But before we get onto that and some other little news pieces that we've got for you, big news pieces, it's my turn. So I'm Zim. I'm a bold little lad who has streamed VR for nearly a decade now, and I haven't had enough of this yet. My thrill of the week, I'm going to give you 2 little things. The first one is Lego Brick Tales, which was, for me, a heck of a ton of fun. I thought I'd go into that game and just be ready to rip holes in it. You know, I knew it was, I was like, this is a branded thing. It's probably for kids. No way I'm going to enjoy this. And honestly, it's the best thing I've played all month. So exceeds everything else out there. What they do so well is allowing creativity and integrating your creativity directly into the game. So you've got a game, it's got like dynamic lighting, I suppose, or generative lighting. And like, I built the world's ugliest gyrocopter in Legos. They give you pieces, and how you assemble it is up to you. They give you more than you need, and then your little Lego dude kind of hops in it, and it either will fly or fail dramatically. And the same thing is true for bridges and other constructions that you make. And then it gets installed into the world, so you kind of get zipped out to like a build area. And then once your build is complete, you test it. Once it passes, it inserts into the world, and then it becomes a permanent part of the world that your character is then journeying through. So it's a lovely little adventure with this Lego person. You can totally customize your Lego person, and as you go, you can earn money by finding cute, adorable little creatures, like little hermit crabs, little bunny rabbits. That part is really awesome, and those are like the collectibles. They give you money to characterize or customize your character. And then really just the creativity part of it I thought was great. Some people were saying they didn't like the fact they don't give you an open sandbox, like here's a green board to just build what you want. This is very much a kind of a silly story-led game, but you get like roller coasters and you get to build parts of like of a theme park that go in, get ridden. You know, grandmas come in, jump on the ride that you constructed. And there's enough creativity there that it really, really sparked up my like, you know, post-teenager brain who used to love Legos and all that. So yeah, if it's one that you were thinking to pass by, don't. Gets a buy award from me. I think it's a must play, honestly. It's a really, really great little game. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And you can play an MR as well, which makes it super comfortable. This is what I do. I'll watch a Netflix film like Quest 3 pass through and have my Lego thing out there. So talking to the wife or whatever, but then working away, playing the game at the same time. So really, really loved Lego Brick Tales. And for those who don't know, it was a flat game that they brought to VR kind of a year later. So it's kind of an interesting one. And then I have to, say thank you both to Adam and a previous sponsor of ours, Dungeons of Eternity. I started playing that with my wife, and man, that game, like it really has me by the cojones because it's got enemies that like come at you. I thought it was going to be like any other dungeon crawler, kind of, you can take it, things come at you, you hit them, they fall down, you get coins, right? But man, it's got enemies that come at you. I don't want to spoil anything because it was such a fun part for me. But like Doom, like Doom, think Doom level creatures, and they fuck you up, man, hard. And like it was me and my wife. I mean, she ended up screaming. I was terrified. She saw me eaten alive in seconds. It is so cool. 3-player game, and I can just foresee my holiday season is no doubt going to be filled with passionate threesomes because it is such a cool game. So if you haven't checked out Dungeons of Eternity, the accolades that everyone else has been showering that game with are absolutely deserved. So
straight up, it's
out.
one of the only VR games that is not afraid to be difficult.
Yeah.
To just be like, no, jump here. You're coming here, or this is just gonna flatten you. It's the actual roguelike ethos.
Yeah. You know what it felt like to me? It felt like an upgrade beyond another, like an indie game that I really, really liked was Ancient Dungeon by Dev Eric Dulin out of Germany. And loved that game, loved how it felt, loved the roguelike elements. This brings it to, and I know that's multiplayer now, which I didn't realize until like a month ago. So if you haven't played Ancient Dungeon multiplayer, then go find a buddy. But it's like that, better graphics, better combat systems, even better loot, right? Like that you find and you carry around. And like you say, Anton, it's difficult, but it's challenging without being brutal about it. This isn't like Souls level difficulty. It's not holding your hand. There's almost no like HUD elements, which I love. I adore that. A nice kind of clean display. And man, it bites hard. It bites hard. So that one's great.
What teeth did you pick?
Oh man, I laughed at my wife so hard because she went in with like busted ass teeth, and I'm like, Jesus, woman, you do not look good. So I have to say the teeth side, Adam, of customizing your character is very funny. I went for good teeth, but clearly she picked bad teeth. Very bad teeth.
That's so funny.
Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's move on to the large show at Real then. So first up, the kind of titular opening for this one is going to be Asgard's Wrath 2. Meta, for those who don't know what this is all about, Meta and Sanzaru Games launched their biggest, most aspirational game yet on Quest 2 and Quest 3, weighing it around about 32 gigabytes on the install, as this is just for standalone headsets. You can't play this on PC VR. It might require you to clean up some of your game closet if you're on like a 128 gigabyte headset or something like that. This is the sequel to the oh-so-pretty PC VR adventure, which was called Asgard's Wrath, which released 4 years ago. And the world has changed so very much in that time. It's kind of scary looking back to see where we were, which I would have said was kind of a PC VR-oriented VR landscape, to where we are today, where, I don't know, 75% of the market is kind of eaten up by Quest, and it's kind of a scary place to be until it matures a bit further. But this week we saw one particular eye-catching number, and that's the number 10. That was a 10 out of 10 that IGN gave to Asgard's Wrath 2. And when I saw that, I had thoughts. But before we do that, let's stop and take a pulse. Who here has gotten a taste of this 120 hour RPG and I'm curious what each of you think who've had a chance to try it or at least just see it.
Just see it, yeah, but not play like enough to say I played it.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
neither.
Yeah. I literally just played it this morning so I could have an opinion.
How many
I'm
how many hours did
completely
you put
honest.
in, Adam, or just scrape the surface?
Like 2. So
Oh yeah, you play
not
more
a
than I
lot, but
did.
an okay enough
That's a
amount
fair dip.
compared to
Yeah,
the first one.
that's a fair dip. What did you put into the first one, or have you not played the first one?
I was trying to actually get through the first one before this one, just so I would have some reference, and I didn't finish it, unfortunately. But I
It
don't
gets
know
a
how
little
many
bit
hours.
dragged out, the first one, I feel like. You know, the beginning
Yeah.
is really cool, but then afterwards it gets a little bit repetitive, or like the story isn't really there. I think I put like maybe 6 or 7 hours in the first one, but then I kind of
Same.
like tapped out, I think.
Yeah. What about you, Anton? I saw you dipping in last night, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and granted, I was a little soured going into it because I did like I've had nothing but technical problems with the Quest 3 since getting it. So like yesterday, I like pulled it out. Okay, I'm gonna charge it. I'm gonna play it. I pulled it up. It started updating my left controller and finished, and I clicked, oh, download Asgard's Wrath. Do not ever do this, apparently, on a Quest. If it goes to update one of your hands, don't touch it until you are 100% positive it was both. Because I got the headset stuck in this intermediate state where one controller had updated and the other one just wouldn't. I restarted it
Oh,
twice. I have no idea what I ended up actually doing to finally get it, but the controller wouldn't turn on. It would just like blink the white button. So I was mad by the time I actually got into the game, which was not the best headspace. But I don't know. I think like playing it, I will say they did as good of a job as anyone spending this money trying to create this specific type of thing could do in this hardware context. So that's like the framing of what I'm
I
going to
like
say.
that.
But
That's a
I
good
feel like the first 45 minutes of this game is a demonstration of why VR still has not exploded amongst a general game audience, because
Yeah.
it's sort of like a greatest hits of everything that like doesn't work in the medium
Mm,
in terms of like
Yeah.
it's conjuring this sort of like grand epic feeling, but there's no visual audiovisual atmosphere that is able to actually carry it.
Right, yeah.
Audio
That is
quality is
such a good
terrible. It's tinny and high frequency. I was like, as I was sitting there listening to the narration, I pulled my sleeves up over my hands and went like this to get the audio to bounce back towards my head to give it
okay.
some low end.
So you were using a
Because
naked
what you-
Quest 3 on this.
Naked Quest 3 with Elite strap and their overpriced terrible grips. And so I was standing there the whole time, actually with my arms like this to like give the bodies some booming voice into it, because it's like God's talking above you and things, and it sounds like they're kind of talking through like a pair of air beads because you're playing it on a Quest 3. And then you're at like all of these epic scenes. They're trying to like conjure this miasmatic dimension that you're in, and there's no fog, there's no particles in the air, there's no texture to any of it because of the graphical limitations of it. So it's I see, and this is my problem with a lot of Quest 3 games, which is that they are not playing to the strengths of what is capable within that hardware band, the way that all of the like classic console games
Right.
that we grew up in.
Yes.
Like a perfect example is like go watch the intro sequence to Metal Gear Solid 2.
That was a place-
Running
yeah.
on this incredibly weak piece of hardware compared to even a Quest 1,
Yeah.
actually. And like every single element of it, like there's rain and there's fog and there's
I'm so
cool
happy.
motion graphics going on. And obviously, like he's using a cinematic movie language, and not all of that is transposable to VR. But everything about that experience is smartly functioning within the bounds of what can be done hardware wise to create an impactful image.
Yep.
And nothing about the image experienced was impactful to it. It was
I wouldn't call it
competently
impactful.
executed.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, but I wouldn't call it impactful. I think it's more they're not just using the strengths of the hardware. I think right now, and this is a result of really talented builders within development, because you mentioned Metal Gear Solid, right? That what made that game so impactful was that it had its own game engine, right? They built the tools that they're using within those hardware confines. And what's happening right now is that the people that you said it yourself, they threw as much money to build such a game. The game that I couldn't stop thinking about, and you guys I don't know if you guys remember this Nintendo 64 game, but it's Jet Force Gemini. It made me think of Jet Force Gemini because it was exactly what Anton just said. It was a game that looked grandiose, it had scale, but it just felt like very basic controls when you got to it. And you can tell this was like Rare trying to figure out how to maximize, building within this Nintendo 64 hardware. And then a year later, or within that same year, boom, we got Donkey Kong 64, we got Perfect Dark. We started seeing a lot of graphics and what works, right? It's similar to the Super Nintendo and these older games using CRTs screens to their advantage. That's not being done in VR right now, because and you called it the greatest hits of development, because that's exactly what's happening. Is but people who are building right now for these all-in-one headsets, they're not, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, because I know there's some people within the space, but they're not engineers. They're developers. So they're in coding, we call these script kiddies, right? Which is they grab code of what works. It's like, oh, I want to have a hand interaction and does this. So they're not innovating within that code. They're just copying and pasting that mechanic. And so it just feels like they're stitching a lot of mechanics into a game and see what works. We're not seeing innovation, really. That's what felt to me with Asgard's Wrath 2. When you see the gameplay, you compare it to 1, is like, where is the innovation? It looks like they maximize the gameplay within the hardware.
We are going, I can tell already, with 2 just teaser opinions there on the table so far. This cart is going to get drawn and quartered in 4 different places, I can tell you. So with that, you both have said a piece now, and there's definitely a lot to say on this topic. Adam, first impressions, what'd you think of your first 2 hours?
I actually didn't have an issue with the audio, and I too used a Naked Quest, but I'm also using cheap Logitech headphones, so I don't know. Maybe I'm just not an amazing audio carer.
No, wait, hang on. So if we're saying a Naked Quest, it means you're not wearing headphones. You're just using the soundbar audio.
Yeah, just from the Quest directly. I mean, and I was okay with it.
Oh, sorry, you're saying your benchmark is your usual Logitech headphones,
Exactly.
and you're
I mean, look at the
that.
headphones I'm wearing. They're not, these were what, like $40 maybe. So maybe that's why my sensitivity to audio quality isn't as good.
If I can actually ask, do you use earbeads very, very frequently?
No. I am more of actually even a speakers person, God forbid. So
That's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I thought it was okay. My perspective was trying to think about how would someone who's not like a new user to VR, or maybe someone who hadn't played the first game, get into this. And I think it was okay. This is probably gonna be controversial, but I didn't mind at least in the beginning, they have a cut scene where you kind of follow the guy through the rooms, versus like the really crappy ones where it's like a flat screen you're just watching in VR. So at least I liked the attempt on that. The combat, what I will say is that yes, it doesn't look as good obviously as the first game, but I think what they did really well were the animations. I think the animations still do particularly well, and I love slicing things into chunks of, slice off the arms, being able to slice off the legs. That surprised me. I didn't think that I'd be able to do that. I thought you would just poke them and some blood would come out and that's it. But I guess the only biggest issue I could see, especially for a new user, is the control scheme. Because they do have tutorials that pop up, but you still have to kind of if you're not used to how the Quest controls are, you got to look under it and be like, which one's X, which one's Y. And I think even when it came to the quick bar where you can, quickly select food or items, I don't think they showed you that, because I was like, I have health potions. How do I use them? I know how to do it from Asgard's Wrath 1, but how would I know that otherwise if I hadn't played the first game? So I think the controls might be a little confusing and slightly intimidating, especially the menu. You open the menu and there's like, bam, it's like you got 6 different rows of everything, which I mean, I like being able to look at lore and stuff. But
it's a little overwhelming. That segment of the game is a bit overwhelming. And there was just on the point about if you're a new user approaching Asgard's Wrath, there is something that they do in the intro, which I would equate to when Bone Labs came out and there's the guy with the noose and all that, and that's quite shocking. Like in the opening, you have a mummy that pops out and like spits acid or whatever into your face.
It's a horror game.
And it reminds me of The Well from years ago, which was just a little Oculus Share demo where you'd look over a dark well and this thing would crawl up and like jump scare you right there. And they do that. That's the handshake. Now, I like horror games. I like scary stuff in VR. So for me, I'm totally cool with that. But my wife was like, it was kind of like a not for me moment. And I have seen people on Reddit being like, what the hell are you doing that in the intro? I think Ballsy is good, but like there's going to be differences of opinion here. Like, remember when Onward released and we got, smooth motion, like slippery sliding around there's no more, snap turn or whatever. You're just like sliding around a desert scene and people are like, oh, you're going to get everybody sick. But now it's like a common standard in VR. And so I appreciate the momentum forward. But Adam, I feel a lot what you were feeling maybe in those first 2 hours. And I think I saw Anton allude to some of this on his Twitter. And finally now I can take my the gaffer tape off, the meta muzzle off, right? I had access for, I don't know, 2 weeks or so. Honestly, after putting 5 hours into the game, and it wasn't even at that point where I felt like I got to a segment where I can see all the bells and whistles they put. They put so many bells and whistles. The menus got it. They've got so much detail. Kind of like what Anton, you said opening. You can't challenge the fact that they really did a quality job of putting all the pieces together. But when I approach a game, the number one thing I'm looking for on my tick list of 12 things that I think make a VR game good is fun. Am I having fun doing the thing, right? Am I having fun playing the game? And what I felt like I was doing, it felt very akin to Power Wash Simulator. I felt like I was doing tasks. I'm doing chores. I wasn't having fun. Contrasting that, for example, to Dungeons of Eternity. Dungeons of Eternity's combat is amazing. Every clink of the blade, every swipe of the enemy, I felt like I was connecting. I felt like they had a fair fight with me. I do not feel that way about the combat in Asgard's Wrath. I feel like the combat, even though they've tried to move away from parry combat, which is press button A or swing left and all this, it's this awkward halfway house between do anything you want and parry combat systems. And it doesn't feel natural. And to me, it doesn't feel fun. Like Adam said, lopping arms off is great. I really, really enjoyed that part. And the things that I like about the game are, it's ballsy, right? I've got a big, 20-foot high pair of saggy blue breasts hanging out in front of me in the ether. And I was like, wow, the last time I remember doing that was when I was acting in a play, doing Macbeth. And like, this is a Shakespearean moment I'm having. And they actually care. There's art here that I'm being presented with. And seeing that in a standalone headset is like, I just want to applaud. The problem that I found, like what Adam was saying, right, is just the over complexity of the startup scenes. And to be honest, 5 hours in, if I had bought this game, I mean, I guess you can't at 5 hours, but I would certainly try to. I'd be turning around and refunding it. I wouldn't play it anymore. It would just sit on the shelf. And that's the problem for me, is that, like, and I want to remember something here, because I tend to stand, probably not like Anton and some of the others here in the crew, apart from the crowd and the crowd's opinion a lot of times, right, when these things come. So I see IGN give it a 10, and I grimace because it means certain things, and I do want to talk about those, but to me, like, Asgard's Wrath, it does so many things right, but the totality of the package, like the introduction is going to turn people off, and it's dangerous. In a TikTok and YouTube Shorts environment where people have such short attention spans, if it doesn't hook those people and it doesn't serve them and give them that fun feeling, and some people are having a blast with this game, I recognize that, and they're RPG fans and they're used to a grind or whatever, but like, if we give them what Medal of Honor did years ago, not well. It had a 2-hour tutorial up front ahead of, I'll call it dumb arcade fun, that then took you through like 12 different levels, and it was a great fun FPS game. But if you do that with an RPG and you're like, I'm going to take you through 4 or 5 hours of difficult kind of just stumbling, and then the world opens up and it becomes this surprising thing. You didn't have anything to kind of promise that around the corner. You weren't just going to be picking up more dates and putting them in your inventory. And it's like, what are we doing here? Like, what am I supposed to love? Like the visuals, I don't care about. I really don't.
Do you think that it is possible to release a game this big without all that hand-holding in the initial first 2 hours? Because unfortunately, this is the conundrum, because I have to look, I try to look at it from both sides. From an experience perspective, you're absolutely correct, but also from a mainstream perspective, and the metrics that the meta store imposes on these developers, they kind of require all of that hand holding for all these mechanics. That's something that's been popularly spoken against the meta store, but a lot of people don't get into the intricacies of what makes it so difficult to get into the store. But that's exactly it, is all of that hand holding that's required in the menu, in the interface, and the accessibility controls.
I don't really agree with that. Go ahead, Anton.
I mean, it is a big corporate game. It plays like a big corporate game. It espouses the values of a big corporate game. And I don't know why one would expect it to be anything other than that. In the same way that, like, Half-Life Alyx, for example, or other big pillar thing. There are a bunch of things that I adore about Alyx. And then there's a whole bunch of things that I absolutely hate, because it is absolutely the product of Valve's iterative design and playtesting process, where they basically just bring in people with zero experience, who are not gamers at all, with no priming whatsoever. And every single place that someone has a moment of friction, someone is there with 80 grit sandpaper to remove that piece of friction, regardless of what the semiotic impact of that is, regardless of whether that moves the game further away from what someone who is an enthusiast finds stimulating or finds long form rewarding, because they have privileged certain things about a holistic design process. They are not trying to make a game for enthusiasts. They're trying to meet the demands of a broad audience and onboard people and bring in wide. And this is clearly a game built around that as well. My problems with Asgard's Wrath are actually the ways that it fails to do, like it fails to sell VR, because it's like, here's a bunch of people talking and more talking, and then like, here, let's stand there like an idiot and watch a guy do cool things.
Yeah, it's so funny, because I had that reaction to that scene, the Indiana Jones scene, where you see a guy go through an awesome array of traps. Now, you do get to that point yourself about 4 hours later, but at that moment, you're kind of like, you don't feel like you're going to get to do that. You feel like it's kind of taken away from you. And I have to say, I really like, and this is so funny, because I think we're going again in different directions here. Like the audio, I agree that I didn't have a particular problem with it, but I was using headphones, so I'm not going on soundbar, and that can definitely have an impact. But in terms of the cinematic qualities and the animations in the game, I thought for a standalone experience that they were phenomenal. Those are actually some of the strongest parts of the game. But then there's some limitations where I felt like Asgards is almost overreaching. Like you get into the pub area at the beginning, and if you've played the first game, and I recognize probably 10% of the audience will have played the first game, you get in there, and the first question is, you turn around from the barkeep, and you're like, where's the goddamn band? The band in the first one was like a cantina band in Star Wars. It was like a big deal. And it was so cool, and the music was great, and it felt festive, and it felt like a real pub. And this one, it's like you and one person, and then you go from point to point to kind of let that bit pop in. And it's like, I don't know what you're doing here, but I would have preferred you to put me somewhere completely else that didn't feel like it was shoehorning in a PCVR experience, dragging it down to standalone level. Like, for example, you then get to a place where you're fighting a boss in a pretty cool scene outdoors. It's very fluid. It introduces some of the basic combat mechanics, and that's all very successwe're I felt it was great. Yeah. And then you end up going under the ice and all this kind of cool stuff.
But doesn't that bring it to the issue that we're having here? Like, I think we're all agreeing that this is a very big game from Meta, but I think we shouldn't forget that this was a very big game from Meta on PC. Asgard's Wrath on Quest is it's never been really a thing. And
the CPU, man.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, was it a smart decision to bring out? I mean, of course it is a smart decision because this is their product. But like, this brings me back to like the little thing that pains me so much with virtual reality is that, it sometimes feels, although I think this is great that they're releasing this on a standalone device. But what I'm hearing a lot, I think this looks great for a standalone experience. I think this works great for it being standalone. I think the game content is long enough for it being a standalone game. And that's the issue that I'm having a little bit with these kind of titles. Like, if you're making Asgard's Wrath 2 and it looks worse than Asgard's Wrath 1, I don't really care that it's now on a different device. Like,
and the
me,
average consumer isn't going to have the nuance,
Exactly.
understanding, or fucks to give at all for that difference.
Yeah.
So that then comes down to like, and I agree completely with like, because I'm also very much into audio. I think audio is very important. It's something that you don't notice up until that it's bad or up until that it's gone. There's something missing. And I really appreciate what Anton highlighted before, because I do find that indeed with the Quest, with the Naked Quest, you're not gonna get that boomy sound in a lot of games that you play. But like the thing that frustrates me the most and still is like what Adam mentioned about the control design. Like, if there's something about virtual reality, it's that it should be intuitive.
Yep.
Like, because you're using your hands. If you're gonna make complex user schemes, it's gonna make everything about the game more annoying.
We need more engineers. We need people to stop.
I don't know.
I want to stick in just a little flag for a conversation later.
Yeah, all right.
And
Let's do
this
that.
This is directed at Anton when we get to talk about H3 VR later.
Yeah.
I spent an hour using the police baton to scoop up guns off the floor, and he's gonna hate me for that, I'm sure. But we'll talk about that later. But I wanted to mention it because intuitive is a very difficult thing to fulfill across a wide array of users. It's got to feel like magic, and the amount of testing and variety of people you got to put through it to make a system that feels natural.
But if
to
we're
a
calling
majority of
Asgard's
users,
Wrath a big game,
difficult.
Then this amount of testing and this amount of like wide variety of users should have been having experience with this game and should have been, giving that feedback. That's what I feel like.
That's not how games are tested. This is more, now you're getting into the meats and potatoes of game development at a AAA level, is that quality assurance for these games are usually being done in real time. They usually do milestones. So usually especially for VR, and Anton could probably speak about this at a much more senior level, but they usually, and especially what I see with Meta, is that they do prototype testing, right? So they have these certain, mechanics and certain development practices, like you mentioned, like the ability to use the baton to scoop stuff. Most of the people that are building interactions, they are using, and I said it before, like preset animations, preset design, code work, right? That way the development companies that are helping their publishing team, their senior developers, are helping them with what they know, which is usually stuff you learn at like Oculus Code Academy or all of these camps, not really people experimenting and building with this hardware, right? It goes back to Hideo Kojima, because honestly, he's a great example of that. What made Metal Gear Solid stand out was it was one of the first games that introduced a singular game engine on the PlayStation hardware that was maximizing, all of the trickery. We have seen this before at the tail end of the PlayStation 3 lifespan with The Last of Us, where it almost felt like a PlayStation 4 game, but it's because they learned so much optimization, what to do, all the hackery from the PS3 hardware from the original,
But are we then saying that
titles.
The life cycle of Quest is too short? Because
I would say the
that's what I'm
development life
hearing a
cycle
lot.
is too short.
Like that maybe developers
developing
don't get enough
for like
time developing
4
for a
years,
device.
3 to 4 years of this has been in development. So I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like if we're talking about, and I'm going to use the term AAA, meaning the amount of investment that goes into it, right? They've got a top tier game budget to build. Goes back to, again, Antro's intro here. Like, given that money, funding, talent that went into the project, do we feel the project is successful in delivering, and will it wow both existing audience and new audience? I just want to stop for a minute because Adam, you were trying to say something there about
Yeah.
3-4 minutes back. What was it you wanted to
Um,
jump in on?
I think well, talking about controllers, if I remember correctly, and I could be remembering wrong, at least in Asgard's Wrath 1, it's like press X and you would see virtual versions of your controller, and X would be highlighted or whatever. I didn't notice that in 2. I don't
They
think
didn't.
it was there.
I
So yeah.
I could not remember which hand X was on. Every time they would bring up a new thing, I'd be like, okay, that's neat. And then I believe the button glows if you think to pull up your hand and see it. But I just had
Ah.
my hands down at my side, and I was like, which one of those? Like like as a developer, I'm all like, I have 2 A buttons and 2 B buttons. I don't even think of like X and Y as being an input.
The
Sort of
point that
thing,
you're
because I
making
don't do
there,
handed controls.
yeah, the point that you're making there, Anton, about did you think to pull the controller up to see the glowing button? And this is back to Adam, because I know you had a blast with Arizona Sunshine, and I'm having a much better time now that I got past an impasse. I just wanted to mention this as a showcase of that kind of design. There's a certain part in the game where they introduce crafting, and the way they demonstrate to you that you're supposed to essentially put 2 objects together is a string between the 2 controllers that has the prompt text. Basically, combine these 2 items, and you'll get the thing you want. I spent 2 hours in the scene with the little briefcase for Arizona Sunshine 2, rebooting the game, thinking it was a bug, not being able to get past the door that you needed a grenade for because I
Oh,
had a
no.
suitcase that you opened with a recipe card in front of me, and I was finding things from the shelves and putting them down. I'm like, I can need 3 of this thing, 2 of this thing. Why isn't the suitcase, when I close it, creating this thing? What's happening?
It was like an IQ
and it was
test.
It was like, yeah, it was incredibly frustrating. And I have another friend who literally just stopped and uninstalled the game at that point. And
Jeez.
This point about how a person interacts with the game in VR is really a difficult challenge. I just want to recognize that.
Yeah.
I think the only thing in Asgard's Wrath 2, I found the control scheme fine. I did have to do the sneak a peek to the controller myself. I mean, I use multiple VR systems. I'm bouncing mostly between a PSVR 2 and the Quest 3. And I just don't remember. Like half the time I've got different controllers in my hands. I use a Switch upstairs, so I don't remember. But also, and I suppose Rowdy would be here with me, I don't necessarily want the glowing button. I don't necessarily want to be told, especially every time I do it, maybe first time or a reminder here and there.
Yeah.
But one of the frustrations that I had with the game was, like the first game, for some reason, they want to handhold you every time you walk up a flight of steps. And only through someone in YouTube yelling at me going like, if you do it once, the highlight thing disappears. Well, I didn't know that. So I'm spending my 5 hours with every ladder I go to, a glowing orb that says, hey, push down the thumbstick to, bypass this segment. And I'm like, I don't need that. And so I would just skip it. I just walk up the stairs with this glowing, ugly thing hanging on the stair rail.
Oh,
And I'm
God.
like, and there's so much of that in Asgards. In Asgards, there is so much like, let's help you out. So when Anton, you were talking about Half-Life Alyx, about the 80 grams sandpaper and how they polish every piece, and it's like, we want to make sure there's no trip up points. I don't know. I'm caught between the frustration I had with Arizona Sunshine 2, which made me immediately like a real dent on my thought of that game. And now I'm having such a better time that it's a fun, kind of very boxed in kind of shooter. And Asgard's Wrath 2, where you've got, man, the amount of menus and notifications. Like, I feel like I'm on my phone in the morning clearing notifications because every single item has something to kind of go and browse and look at. And I know that's a standard for games these days, and I'm not dinging it for that. But it gets in my way of having a good time. It gets in my way of like feeling like I'm in the world. That's the problem for me. Yeah.
Well, it's one of the reasons why I want to push back on the sort of notion that the core problems here are one of like technical ones, or like there's a lack of sort of engineers. Like the part of the the core problem right at the heart of Asgard's Wrath is that it is a contradictory proposition in the first place. It is an adaptation of what is easily the most UI heavy game genre outside of like games you play, like 4X games that you play on a map. Like what the RPG has grown into has been like, yo dog, I heard you like user interfaces, so we put a user interface in your like, it's just it's boxes and menus and items. It's the way in which these games have been padded from like tight 12-hour narrative driven experiences to 150-hour user engagement farms to prime, social sharing and secondary purchase opportunities, yada yada yada. Like everything about that is about UI futs instead of immediacy, drama, action, etc. And so this is an adaptation of what we have mutated RPGs into, then being put back in, but being shoved into a medium that is about your hands, not staring at a rectangle with lines of icons.
Very good
I
point.
think what I mean by engineers and the technical limitations is that there is no technical experimentation happening in the QA process to know if a game is fun, right? That's kind of what I was speaking more about. If we're going to answer
Jose, how do you make that claim? I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me explain that, because right now most of the development studios that are building for MetaQuest are they're not traditional developers, they're not traditional coders. Most of the people that are doing amazing stuff on PC VR, right, that the experimentation, they're pushing really technical scale up in the development. Most of this stuff can't be done on a Quest 2 from just porting over, right? So most of the stuff that is available to be done on these headsets is kind of cookie cutter. There's not a lot of development experimentation.
I have to flatly disagree.
Find me name one AAA game on the
many developers.
Okay, exactly.
Cool.
So name a Quest store that's on the store that doesn't have all of that hand holding that Asgard Wrath 2 has, because we're talking about a mainstream game compared to PC VR, right? We're talking about
Jose, what was the question? So you're saying find what kind of title?
So find a AAA game of the level of Asgard's Wrath 2 at the Quest store that doesn't have the hand holding, all of the polish, the 80 grounds of polish as mentioned. That's going to be the standard for mainstream games that are going to be sold at a very high market audience. The PC VR market is nowhere
to do with the technology being cookie cutter or not. Like that's a set of design objectives and about what has been prioritized in terms of the way a user onboards, the way a system is designed, the way it's allowed to fail.
Yeah.
Like those decisions have very little to do with technology and have to do with those are all user experience decisions.
And those things that you're talking about, they're not being allowed onto the store. That's what I'm speaking about, is that there is a process. There are metrics for the people that QA these games to allow them into a mainstream audience, and unfortunately they do care about all that unknowing hand holding, is what I'm talking about. Is that there's no scale up of adoption for mainstream right now that's allowing people to come in and say, hey, this is actually the right way of onboarding a player into a game. This is the right way of starting a game experience. And unfortunately, when you look at the guidelines of MetaQuest games, there is onboarding and offboarding procedures that need to be met. That's why a lot of games get stuck in the authentication process.
I want to just take a sidestep for a second, because there's something that's dawning on me while we're talking, okay? And it is the same reason I've been kind of holding my breath for the last couple of weeks and have not progressed and have not returned to Asgard's Wrath yet, is that this game is everything that I've heard about it, that I know about it from firsthand experience. It's a very deep game with what seems to be a very rough onboarding process, in that, and I like what Anton said about the fact that it makes a promise and then it kind of is breaking it. It's almost an unwinnable, it's in an unwinnable position, being this heavyweight RPG. Like there's probably 200 ways you could take a user from no knowledge of the game and how to interact with the world to I know what I'm doing. But I do feel like, oh geez, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but trying to get that user through that path without noping out is my number one
Rough.
concern.
Yeah.
That's my number one concern.
That's
Is
I
that
understand
as
that.
a
Yeah.
player for many years now, for a decade in VR, like I wasn't having fun. Other people are. Fine. The game has some really cool elements to it that it's able to show off, and it's obviously got a lot of talent that's been put into it. And this group here who's talking today hasn't gone past the 20-hour mark with this game. I think we're representative of the community who will never hit the 20-hour mark. And that's my concern, is that what I've learned from game dev, I only ever worked on a single game myself, is that you make a game, and from the 100% margin of it, like, so many players will only ever taste 5%. And fair enough, maybe the game's not for them. But for the people who only taste 5%, they're going to walk away with such a different feeling. And that's really what we're kind of talking about right now today. Because maybe some of us will break off from this and go find love in this game, and enjoy what Sanzaru and Meta have funded and put out there. And that some people are obviously smitten about, including IGN. So I wanted to just take
the question was if this is a successful game, right? Because that's what
how do you
if it's a
determine
successful
success?
game, it is a 10. Well, meaning
No. So
all of the metrics of mainstream adoption. That's why IGN. You don't think IGN gave it? Do you really think IGN played the game?
Let me
for
read out
120
their.
hours?
Let me read out their definition. Yes, they did. They did a 90-hour complete end-to-end review. They had time for it, and they spoke to it in their review. So let me just speak to this for a second, because the game is meant to have 120 hours, including some of the side content, maybe even 140 in there. This is what IGN means when they give out a 10.
Yep.
Okay, this is their words. So masterpiece is what they sum it up as. Our highest recommendation. These are classics in the making that we hope and expect will influence game design for years to come as shining examples for other developers to learn from. Examples they cite from recent times: God of War, Zelda Breath of the Wild, Grand Theft Auto 5. Okay? And in a sentence, this is how they summed up Asgard's Wrath 2. They said, this open world action RPG sets a new gold standard for VR and competes with the best anywhere. And I believe that the anywhere alludes to the fact that this is a standalone headset, and you can take this game and you can go play it in a field if you like.
I interpreted that as anywhere as being, whether you're comparing it to a PC game, whether you're comparing it to a VR game. That's how I interpret it.
I don't think so. I don't think
As in as in toe to toe with, like,
GTA 5.
I know a lot of people love Half-Life Alyx, for example, is a great VR
it's
game.
the other 10 out of 10. So it competes with God of War. If you have to choose your best games ever, then that game would be in that list. That's how I interpreted that statement.
I don't think that's what 10 out of 10
anywhere.
no longer means, though. 10 out of 10 means that it is a mainstream success. It means it hits all the metrics. There's replayability.
I don't think
it has
that's
enough.
what IGN does.
It has enough. Yeah, but that's what they mean by their 10 out of 10. And to be honest, that's
don't.
what most stores build to deliver on. Like you just mentioned yourself, we are not interested in this game because we're hardcore VR enthusiasts. We play games at higher caliber, higher level.
Hang on. I am interested in Asgard's Wrath.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
I'm just disappointed that they made the sequel to Asgard's Wrath 1 for Asgard's Wrath 1 fans, which, to be fair to a dev team, is exactly what probably they should do. Feed the fan.
But how do we know that? There's no Asgard's Wrath on MetaQuest store. So clearly that is not their market audience at all. Like if they really wanted an Asgard's Wrath 2 to be a lead up from Asgard's Wrath 1, they would have, and I agree with you, the 2 is a dumb thing to do. They should have done it, the naming conventions and all that. I'm with you. But when you look at the marketing, there's nothing that says this is for the PC VR.
Hold on. I'm losing you. You hit like three things in a go there.
I think he's making a very good point here, which is that, like, anyone who's releasing in general a Quest 2 game or a Quest 2/3 game right now is 100% not releasing a product with any expectation that someone played any given PC VR game
Yeah.
in 2016,
Right.
2017. So like this product is not for people who played the first game
Not at all.
at all, which
Yeah.
granted is part of the reason why it's a very confusing product.
Exactly.
It's also just confusing that they spent $80 million or whatever on a big IP that no one knows or
Nobody-
gives
yeah.
a shit about.
Yeah.
Because that was
It's
my
also not
question
the-
initially.
it's
Is it
also
a
not
big
the
game?
first- Is it a big game?
Yeah, I mean the title Asgard's Wrath, because we all know it because we played Asgard's Wrath
The
1.
money
No.
behind
But-
it is they got
but-
the
Oh, wait,
MGS Sphere.
but it's not like you
Sure.
can't compare it to a series like GTA. You know, if GTA 6 comes out, everybody knows GTA 5, 4, 3, 2. But does Asgard's Wrath have that same in the in that
Clout?
little VR community? Sure, a lot of people know Asgard's Wrath, but in the Quest community, I don't think so. I don't know if there's
Okay,
that
so
much-
someone had
general
said,
audience.
yeah.
Neko Atsume over Asgard's Wrath. Like, give that as an example, a mobile game. More people recognize that title over what is Asgard's Wrath. Even for the Game Awards hologram, that viral video that went out, you didn't see. I mean, it conveniently
Asgard's
cut out
Wrath,
for the
yeah.
title. Nobody knew what the game was from. Like, what's this alien coming out of the portal in the sky? Like,
But what
sad.
is the so again, just to play devil's advocate here, what is the benefit of starting from zero instead of starting from at least some IP recognition? Because it's not the first game, almost finished. It's not the first game to swap consoles. I mean, there's things that started off on, I'm trying to think of a good example here now, but say like the Tomb Raider series or something like that, like going from one flavor of console to another. I know normally that's a generational step forward, but thinking back to maybe Carmack's original offering, standalone is a future for VR, and there's a reason why it's gotten such success so far. I know a lot of us old school PCR fanboys aren't very comfortable in this middle area we're trapped in right now because, the resolution, the processing power, all of that isn't up to snuff yet, but it'll get there in a couple of generations. And so it going from PC VR to kind of a Quest directed audience as a standalone title, I don't see that being a misstep per se. I mean, someone said they could call it Loki's Adventure or something like that
I
and
saw that
start from
too.
scratch, right?
Yeah.
Smart idea, but then you lose, whatever attention you had from Asgard's Wrath 1, including that entire fan base, if you have subtext that
Very
says,
small percentage, though. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
compared to the amount of new people going in,
Right.
like buying Quest 3s for the first time, maybe this game is their first experience over people that are like,
We're old. A lot of years passed, actually. And
Yeah.
it wasn't a big audience to begin with. And a tremendous percentage of that audience, like their VR set wore out and they just
bad
haven't
but true.
bought another one. Like the attrition rate has been wild. And we're talking about basically a different entire generation of people at this point. So
I think
like,
I think there was a lot of like if I love looking at this kind of stuff from like a business decision too. And when I look at Asgard's Wrath, I see a lot of talented developers with experience with and it goes to the IGN last paragraph where you said, I hope this is the template. I don't think they were talking about the specific game or the style, but rather how games are built with a AAA mentality. And I think that this game, for better or for worse, regardless of gameplay, it's considerably a AAA mainstream game. Right? Some people don't like AAA mainstream games for that reason. They feel like a corporate AAA game. They Asgard's Wrath 2 has that written all over it, but that also has, sponsorships, ad deals, and all of the stuff that businesses care about.
The thing is,
mainstream stuff.
The thing is that often when a title changes platform, then it's often an upscale. They go to a platform that is heavier, can have more computing power, so the visuals improve. The gameplay sometimes deteriorate, whatever it is. But when you see the opposite happens, and the first thing that came to my mind was when Diablo announced they went mobile. What was the reaction then as well? It was
exactly.
People
You
were
guys have
furious.
Oh, man.
Yeah, like people were furious.
Rowdy, you are hitting exactly on a point that I want to defend on behalf of fans of Asgard's Wrath 2. Because gameplay-wise, if I was to recommend someone to play Asgard's Wrath 2 first and then go back to Asgard's Wrath 1, the game systems are so much more clunky. So in terms of someone who loved the first game moving to this game, it expands on almost every little piece The problem for me personally, and this is a very personal thing, is that it's a not for me. The first one wasn't for me. This one doesn't feel like it's for me. I'm going to give it more hours, but I think I'm going to end it with the same conclusion of I can't give this a buy award from my side. However, what you're saying is, and this is the problem that VR has with flat gamers coming onto this platform, is they look at it and they judge it and they move on. They don't go and put a headset on and play the game and go, oh shit, this is what it is? And that's what I'm saying to you as someone who hasn't played Asgard's Wrath 2. Asgard's Wrath 1 was a spectacle. Probably, even against Red Matter, I would say that opening bridge sequence, the forest scene with the snow, the pub setting, there are things there I will never forget from that first experience. But like you, after 6 hours, I was like, this is kind of feeling very boxed in. I'm not getting the vacation vibe I got with Skyrim VR. I don't feel like I can go make my own adventure. Not for me, I'm an open out. Asgard's Wrath 2 has adjusted so many things in terms of what they've got. The problem I have, the number one problem I have, is the opening handshake takes too long. It just takes way too long. And it teases you with stuff that you don't know whether you're going to get to do or not later in the game. And the question is, with so many things vying for our attention, why do I want to put another 5 hours in? Why do I want to put another 10 hours in? Is it going to give me that fun at the end of it? I did it for other VR games. I just don't know with this one. You know, it just doesn't feel like it's going to deliver for me. So,
and that's probably the most AAA quality of the entire game. Like a perfect example, personal example for this. I have attempted to play Red Dead Revolution or Red Dead 2.
Red Dead
3
Redemption.
times.
Good.
Yeah.
I have Redemption to 2, 3 times. I have tried to slog through that boring as piss opening full of
Opening
people
is
I
slow.
don't care about,
I
who don't
completely- yeah.
seem pleasant, doing things that appear to have no gravity. I'm like, wow, are we just okay? I'm just walking behind this guy now, and it's just, and every single time I've jumped out to it, despite the fact that one of the people I work with has played the game all the way through, and it's one of
Yeah,
he
I'm in the
played it
exact
for
same
months. It
boat.
was his comfort game, and I just could not get over that hump.
And I have done the
meat.
same. I've started that game 3 times, and the 3rd time is when I finally went through that entire snow scene, and I now call it one of the best games I've ever played.
Yeah.
I know,
times.
and
It's
I'm aware
crazy.
that
3
it's
times
there
I tried
for
it.
me.
Yeah.
I am
just
so
unwilling to do that.
I am so scared of Red Dead Redemption 2. I've stared at
Such
it
a
in
great
sales
game.
so many times because there are so many worlds that Rockstar have brought to me, including the VR adaptations, where I just really loved it and I had loads of fun. And again, I'm seeking fun. And I look at Red Dead Redemption 2 in terms of what it sells, and even with friends who, like you, have played the whole thing through several times over, love the thing like it's Jesus, and it's like I'm scared that I'm not gonna like it when I go to it. So I'm still holding off.
That first process is indeed really rough, but maybe that's then speaks in favor of Asgard's Wrath as well, because clearly, I mean, I don't think IGN would just give it 10 out of 10 just because it ticks some marks. I think that it's the
Oh, it
person
does,
who
and the money too.
No, I don't think so. I think that's like a concept that I don't really believe that. I think that this person who wrote this review actually really truly enjoyed this game.
Agree.
Of course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I agree with
he
that.
spent the entire 90 hours, and of course, you know, if the last 50 hours are great of the game, you're gonna forget about the hard time you had in the first
That's
5
true.
hours. That you probably make some marks in it, but you know, like, oh, I just need to get through this. And if then the game opens up and it becomes this like amazing masterpiece, then you know that speaks in favor of Asgard's Wrath, and I do believe that I don't think that they're giving a 10 out of 10 lightly. I don't think that personally.
They're
Yeah,
saying it's a benchmark.
I agree with that.
And
It's a
from
benchmark.
what I've sampled so far, and I can only call it a sample at this point, even 5 hours into a VR game, right? The question I have in my head is it deserving of a benchmark scale rating
Yes.
because of the hand holding? Like, someone is going to buy a Quest, load this up and play it. And I
Yeah.
get it. Look, this is such a unique offering. We don't get many of these in VR, almost none. Like the relationship, if you go into a VR game like a relationship and you're like, I want a long, deep relationship that can take me down many different
No
paths.
long distance.
No
okay.
long
What are we
distance.
talking about?
Stuck with me. I don't think there's many offerings on the table, frankly, right now, going into 2023, unless you're going into deep archives, or unless you're going to a game that was a flat game, AAA flat game that got converted to VR. There's plenty of those, but designed for VR with 100+ hours of gameplay in it, it's hard to kind of compare it to peers. It doesn't
Exactly.
really have peers, and so I'm like, one of the things I really like about it, I just wanted to call out as well because I missed it a little bit earlier, is they tacked in an endless dungeon mode where you can go in, and it's again probably 2.5 to 3 hours into the game. You can go in and fight these like random arenas, which are different landscapes, different layouts, different enemies all flung at you. And that could be, for a gamer like me, quite replayable. I might enjoy going back to that. The trouble I have is there's just so much in this. This game does like 10 different games and a bunch of mini games in it, and it's all there. But I shouldn't feel it 5 hours in like I want to back out of it. And that's my personal trouble with it. But is it a benchmark is the big question that I will aim to answer for myself with probably another 5, maybe 8 hours in it. And at that point I'll have to nope out because there's just other things to play, you know?
Yeah.
I'll ask you this: does it make you excited for like what's to come from that kind of development mindset now that is the new standard? Because that's really why I
question.
considered it a 10 out of 10 in my opinion. It's like I really want to see now fun being part of the conversation rather what works now. This is a 120+ hour connection of stitch up mechanics. What are those mechanics that people are going to consider fun now? And that becomes, whatever they release after this. Because that's really what I can't stop thinking about is seasoned developers, because they did enter this new hardware space from coming to PCVR. And I think, weirdly, I keep thinking about Square Enix. But Final Fantasy, one of the biggest burns that I remember was when the PS3 released. Final Fantasy 13 was like the very first, full AAA, Square Enix backing it. It was going to be a huge, RPG, and these crazy cinematics being shown. And when the game released at midnight, remember, you press X and then you see Lightning doing all the stuff on the screen, and you're just there watching the attacks. And that disconnect hurt that game. But then, the transition now into Final Fantasy 16 now, which did get nominated, whatever opinions aside, but what I'm talking about is the development.
Yeah, so let's all answer that question, because that's a really good question to ask. Does it excite you for what's next? The opinion on Asgard's Wrath, I can say, is it reminds me a lot of how I felt about Half-Life Alyx and how I felt about Red Matter 2. I think those are both like technical marvels. Like, they put stuff together in a way that others hadn't before. And so from IGN's perspective of the idea that, a 10 isn't necessarily a perfect game, but it's like a stepping stone. It's like developers should take this as a benchmark and move forward and iterate on this. Doesn't matter if the game's not for you. I think we can agree that it does a lot of things at a level that other VR games do not, and it should be applauded and awarded and held up as like a good example of what that amount of investment, time, and effort can get you. And so I will probably put it on the shelf, not in my top 10, along with Red Matter 2 and Half-Life Alyx, which also don't sit in my top 10, because they just weren't as fun for me. They were too hand-holdy, they were too rounded corners, they were a little bit boring, not enough ballsy. Like, I like a game that grips me and kind of shoves me into the difficult parts and lets me kind of figure out stuff for myself a little bit more. But that's just my personal opinion. How about each of you? Like, are you excited for the future based on what you've had in Asgard's Wrath 2 so far or seen of it?
I worried a little bit. I mean, first, I don't think most companies are going to be able to even come close to affording everything that they can't, they can, obviously owned by Meta. But I feel like we might see a lot of games that are maybe taking certain mechanics that people liked, but bland ass story. Like, just like these things people liked, but they're going to focus so hard on the mechanics that they're just going to make really boring stories that nobody cares about. And I think that's my biggest fear. I mean, definitely not on the same scale, but think of like Gorilla Tag and all the little Gorilla Tag spawning things like that came off of it. Is awful. I mean,
I love
not
Gorilla Tag.
No,
Not
she's
Gorilla
talking
Tag,
about
Oh,
but
you
the,
mean the
spin-offs.
the
spawns?
the children of Gorilla Tag,
Oh,
all the people
you're
that
saying-
wanted to.
Children of Gorilla Tag.
You're warning us. You're the siren who's warning us of Asgard's Wrath clones done for 1/10 of the budget.
Well, that
Maybe,
would still
like,
be a
not
lot of money.
Not necessarily Asgard's Wrath, like the theme of the game, but just like I said, taking certain mechanics. I haven't played long enough to see what's really unique about the game that one could take. But it's like, oh, I remember that from Asgard's Wrath. Now they took it, put it in this really awful game and they're selling this main mechanic as the selling point for the game. So I think I'm more fearful maybe that we're gonna see some interesting interesting things.
You brought something up in my mind that I just wanted to call out as a memory from the first game. When I crossed it in the second game, I was like, oh no. And I've seen other people go, oh yes. And that was the switch between I am me, I'm a person in another person's body, going up to this like station, like a console with your two hands
God
down,
form.
and then you go to God form. I really didn't like that in the first game. I initially thought, oh, this is going to be kind of a cool out-of-body puzzle. And then I really didn't like it. And this game leans on that as well. And I was like, oh, not this again. I had hoped they would have designed this out.
Pick up your person. Like I wish if you could pick up, it's almost like a Moss sort of thing, where if you could pick up the person you're controlling to get them through different puzzles, I think that would, because that's the first thing I did in both games. The first game, I was like, oh, maybe I'll just move my person up here. Can't do that. Second game, oh, maybe they did it in this game. Nope, still can't do that. So that's something that really bothered me. It's like I get it. Like, oh, they made a joke about you're a god, but you can't pull chains. But then I'm like, why? Why would you even bring that up? Now I feel really stupid. I don't know.
They were trying to be witty.
Over
Weird.
to Rowdy and Anton then for your impressions at this point from what you've seen so far.
Go ahead, Anton.
I was gonna say, why don't you first?
Okay. I mean, I'm of the opinion maybe I often find like smaller developers or indie studios that they're more the ones pushing the boundary further, while I often see the big games like the GTAs and the Asgard's Wrath now and like all those other big games, I see them rather as like a summary kind of like what has been done in the past so many years by indie developers. Take those mechanics from those games, twist it and mold it so that it fits to their game concept and then pushes that out. So for me, like, I'm excited to see what smaller developers are going to be doing, not related to Asgard's Wrath, but trying to like keep on pushing that boundary in terms of focusing on. And I love that Adam brought up Gorilla Tag. It's like, the entire movement, the entire game is based on movement mechanic, right? That's what the game is. It's just one single mechanic. And I'm pretty sure that, 5-10 years from now, there will be some big game studio who will pick up a similar mechanic like that and put that in their game. But it's not that big game studio that pushes the boundary.
I'm secretly hoping, Rowdy, that there is one of the god forms or whatever that you create in Asgard's Wrath 2. That's like they've got the Gorilla Tag mechanic in there. Just secretly. If you in chat know it, all right, don't tell me. But
well, that's what I think. I think it's indie studios that are pushing the boundaries. It's like in science, it's like a meta-analysis. You have a big game company comes in, then takes everything and then like says, okay, this is everything that works in this game, and this is now all the mechanics together. Well, maybe indie game studios focus maybe more specifically on a smaller part, also because of more limited budget. Of course, they don't have the time to spend $80 million on building a fully fledged game like that. That's just what I think.
Good. Anton?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. My concerns largely are at that a game like this is coming out right now amidst sort of like large model failure of AAA games writ large. Like we're like the big industry contraction that we're seeing right now is like a combination of like the bubble that has been video games produced as though they're tech company products, with all of the tech company VC speculative capital shenanigans of the past 15 to 20 years, all imploding because interest rates aren't zero anymore and cash is expensive. So you have that failure. You have, I mean, the leaked memo coming out of Xbox talking about, like, candidly speaking about how the like leverage big IP with long development cycles that are super risk averse model of AAA just in the process of failing, and we're seeing that with like Bungie is probably going to be completely taken over by Sony now and sort of cored out. Big Embracer play to sort of like bundle up a bunch of like B plus to C plus studios into a big bundle and have the Saudis buy it all failed and blew up, and now we're just, thousands of people are going to be laid off by the end of that. So I see something like Asgard's Wrath as sort of like stumbling into a model or trying to like push a model of development that is already way past its peak and maybe into the like absolutely dying phase of things.
So a very
I
positive intake. I get it. Yeah.
I don't know. I think
It's very interesting. Yeah, because I agree with you. I just don't know if it's the death of the industry, but rather the new industry. I guess we consider it a death because we're not a fan of it. But when you look at what's happening with game development and honestly even movie production, it's exactly you're correct. It's now all about production and not really about tech showsmanship. So if they're all becoming into one, I don't think it's the death of it. It's just the new AAA benchmark of what makes a game mainstream. There's just going to be a lot of hand holding, a lot of stuff that we are just not traditionally fans of. I think it's the only way now that you can, penetrate so many markets all at once.
I don't that's Asgard's Wrath is a game made by Meta. If the question is right now, can anyone copy that model and create something that is successful, even if it's beloved, given the current market size, attachment rates,
That's a good
things
question.
like that? The answer is like absolutely fucking not. Like no one is going to spend $80 million and do that. And frankly put, like even heavy hitters who are literally too tooled to do this well, Ubisoft canceled one of their 2 games, sort of thing. We're never seeing that Grand Theft Auto port because their definitive edition port went so badly for those games, and Rockstar rightly was like, oh, we literally can't trust anyone else to do this, and we're not going to waste our time doing it given that GTA 6 is going to make the amount of money that like an entire continent makes in revenue. So everyone who is still waiting for that port to show up for Quest just doesn't understand how the world functions. So
sorry, I'm laughing. I'm only laughing doubly here because I saw in chat earlier they were like, H3 VR Quest when?
What I was meaning to say is not that like the industry is dying. It's just that I think that we're seeing a continued stratification, such that you're going to have like super like constantly evolving mega platforms, like what GTA 6 will turn into. Not even what it will be at release, but what GTA 6 will be 3 to 5 years post release. The Fortnite metaverse, which granted, like kudos to Epic, they're the only ones who are actually creating a metaverse. They just realized like, oh, metaverse isn't about interpolarity between all of these software made by random people running on blockchain scam bullshit. It's just a giant perimeter within which you control absolutely everything. And then if you want to be able to have a skin and a Lego skin, well, then you just mass produce all the Lego skins entirely under your control, vertically integrated. You think about constructing a metaverse the way Apple has constructed their entire brand, like gruesome vertical integration and control.
Metaverse is the happy word for monopoly. It's not,
I mean, it's a
monopoly. It's a metaverse.
It's a VR company town.
Yeah,
it is like old school. You have it exactly right. Old school, late 19th century Monopoly, Gilded Age Part 2, baby. That's what the metaverse will. That's what the metaverses will be. And Epic is like ahead of everyone on doing that, but to such a laughable degree.
And I have to agree. This is the part where I'm taking us back to Rowdy's highlight from today. Those ecosystems, which are mammoth in size and scale, a couple of years down the road could very easily, even having not stepped a foot into VR territory, convert and all of a sudden bring that entire ecosystem through an entry point of VR. So you can all of a sudden be in that world. And I think that the barrier for entry today is too high for developers, even very well-funded developers. But when that barrier, when that point of inflection changes, we're in for a really wild ride. And I think actually that's the point when things go mainstream for VR, because it's, hey, I want to go on VR holiday.
Become mainstream though. I think that it'll be all the other activities and all of the things that we're all aware this technology can do and do well that are that are fucked up, that are taboo, I would say the most successful AR application that has ever existed, because it's of use to everyone, is the backup camera that is legally required to be in everyone's cars. That's augmented reality working, actually solving problems in a way that does it so well that we don't even think of it as the world's first great AR application.
Yeah.
But it's it's like a rear view camera, lines, I turn the wheels of the car, it tells me where the car is going to be. I can suddenly no one hits everyone when they're parallel parking anymore. That just disappeared as a problem because we can finally look out the back of our vehicles. And I think the thing that is going to actually cause the mass adoption of the XR stack into the world is going to be modified personal reality, a lot of which is going to be taboo. I want to delete the things out of my field of view that I do not wish to see. If there's
Echo chamber
categories of
technology.
people I don't want to see, if there's just I'm mad at LGBTQ things, I just rainbow deleter is going to be the third highest thing on the app, because our world is freaking terrible, and it'll be right there between there's going to be the melaninometer that you have X amount of melanin in your skin, and you're just AI replaced with anime girls walking down the street, sort of thing. And that will cause 1 billion people to wear heavy glasses on their face. And I don't think anything an iota
to be
before
fair, that's already happening, right? Because the algorithm is 100% echo chamber technology, right? So it's not like we're witnessing or talking about the future. It doesn't exist. That's already happening, right?
No.
If we want to go there, as a melanin dude, I've had marketing done with me where they whitewash me. I'm like, yo, that's not my skin tone. So that is already happening. I think what the occurrence of all of this is just I'm glad it's true. It is a monopoly, but I think this is just the new how businesses or how markets evolve is by always cutting the middleman out, right? So for the first time, what we're starting to see is that development studios are being cut out by publishers. Publishers are going directly with the builders and the makers, and they're just finding a way to cut so much fat out of the development process that we're just now experiencing a lot of whiplash because of it. Because this is all just part of the new way how markets, because the owners, Fortnite's a great example, right? A lot of people don't realize is that all the skins that you purchase on Fortnite now have a Lego counterpart. So that means there's business IPs and relationships now that were circumvented through Lego and Epic Games, that they're becoming the IP right holders, right? So Epic Games, and that's something that I learned from the business side, is that there's IP licensing events yearly where you meet, actual owners of these licenses. Epic Games has one of the biggest booths at these events now, right? Because they have ownership and rights access to any brand you can think of. It's oh yeah, we can make that an asset. That's just the new market.
Well, with that, speaking on, I suppose, as a punctuation mark, before we move off Asgard's Wrath 2, any final thoughts? I think we got everyone.
I think it will get the positive thing of the review is that it will get a lot of eyeballs on VR. I think that will likely be at least a lot of people again checking it out, and then maybe push that to maybe some other games as well. That's the only thing.
Yep.
Fully. I mean, unless they're okay, I played Asgard's Wrath, I really liked it, now what do I do? And then they try other things and they're disappointed because there's nothing like what they just played. So that again, that's a bit negative. I know that Rowdy is a nice thing, and I'm no.
But then they're in the ecosystem, so who cares?
I mean, look back at what everyone was saying right after Half-Life Alyx came out and what their projections about, they didn't realize, Half-Life Alyx wasn't the beginning of anything. It was literally just the end of PC VR.
Yeah.
It was the punctuation mark and the gravestone.
The summary of everything that's been done before.
Yep. It was the
That's right.
time capsule / reliquary.
Oh man, I look forward to getting to the questions we've got for this round table. All right, and I know we're going heavy into the podcast already. Let's keep this next one a little bit shorter then. Xbox cloud gaming. So previously, on if not the previous podcast, we spoke about the Steam VR app for Quest, which came in. Joy to use, easy to install, easy to use. If you want to get games from your Steam VR library, playing on your headset wirelessly or whatever. I think this Xbox Cloud gaming app really does bring big changes for a product that's already competing and has quite a bit of market share lead by a healthy margin, which is, Quest in the VR space. So we're adding yet another method of playing and enjoying games. And one that I would say not a lot of people have paid too much attention to up till now. But if you happen to have the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, I don't know if it works down with just the pared down PC or console version, but for $20 a month, if you have that subscription already, or you go and pick it up, now you can install an app that allows you to log in to Game Pass and actually play games streamed straight to your headset. Now, as somebody who doesn't have any prior streaming experience, what I mean is any prior game streaming experience, i.e. the server off in the cloud somewhere is hosting the game and I'm going to play it at home, but none of my tin is being used. The headset isn't doing any processing aside from receiving the image. My PC is sitting there unloved on the sidelines. I was pretty astounded at what this could do and the latency that it offered. I thought it would be unplayable. It was playable. I'm not going to say comfortable, but it was playable. And certain types of games allow you to just pair with a controller that you've got. And I will showcase this guy, which I've had since the days of the Oculus Go, when it was like, oh, my 3DOF headset needs a gamepad, but my current one doesn't work. So I went out and bought an Xbox One controller, and I thought, is this going to work with a Quest? Because Quest can't even, do proper Bluetooth. I won't get into that right now, but with earbuds, right? And so I was like, this isn't going to work. Paired very easily through the headset, didn't even have to go to the menu. Paired in seconds, logged in with a code. So not as easy as the Steam VR process, but still pretty easy. And then I was scrolling through a library of AAA games. I mean, it was Starfield and Forza Horizon and Atomic Hearts, which I really enjoyed playing that way. There were some artifacts that showed up while I was playing, but aside from that, it's a totally viable option if you want to catch a seat on your couch or the golden throne, throw up a one of four sizes screen. You can go from small, medium, large, and extra large, really large. I'd say that's like a 150-inch, projector screen at the largest size, and just stream games and play them. My only concern with this, and I'm curious for those of you who have done streaming games before, is I feel a little bit weird if my save file is off somewhere else and I don't have immediate access to it. I can't back up it. I can't back it up. It's sitting off in a cloud somewhere. It feels like if I put my time and my heart into a game and that's separate from me, I don't know. It's a really interesting proposition because I start looking at my PC and going, geez, when this really gets good and they solve the latency problem, if they can, decent way to play flat games in a VR headset and anywhere in your house, So, have any of you had a chance to give that a go?
Yeah,
I'm curious. Yeah, what'd you think, Jose?
I think it's it's cloud gaming. So it's a really good way to cloud game, but you're gonna deal with all the realities of cloud gaming, right? Which is right now. I actually had a pretty interesting conversation yesterday with Amanda Watson, creator of Oculus Air Link, who had quite a bit to say about the expected latency issues, because some people have had negative reactions to cloud gaming because they're trying AAA games and they think that the input has something to do with the streaming or the connectivity. It's just the reality of the technology and Bluetooth limitations, right? So I think it's an exciting step.
Sorry, when you say Bluetooth limitations, so
Yeah.
it wasn't by impression that the communication between the headset and the controller, wireless over Bluetooth. You also have the option, by the way, to jack into the side of the headset, which looks weird, but you can do it. It wasn't that's where the latency was coming from, but it was the processing time, obviously getting my inputs to the server and back again. Is that what you meant? Like that
Yes,
whole
that's
loop?
really where the latency comes from the most, right? And the reason we can prove that is, YouTube live streaming. The technology of one-to-one streaming has been, mostly figured out. The problem now is sending inputs at that same exact rate, right? So the input is going to your headset, and then from the headset to the server where that computer is hosting the games. And there is a lot of advancements that are happening behind the scenes. Cloud controllers are finally starting to become a conversation piece again on live. When who I think of when it comes to cloud streaming years, OGs from back in the day. That was the reason why on live didn't scale up to cloud streaming today, because they were so ahead of time. Was limitations of sending signals. So they created special controllers that instead of having Bluetooth, they're connecting directly to your router. So now that signal is going straight through the internet instead of on your controller. And weirdly
Stadia
enough,
function the same way, actually. Like
Exactly.
that's why you see that. Like, you have until December 31st to convert your Stadia controller into a regular Bluetooth gamepad, because it relied on a more exotic, low latency connection to give you that responsiveness, so that Stadia felt better. And whereas this type of gaming is just relying on the more ad hoc configuration.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
certain games are going to play well with that because of the way that their input loop works. And
Right.
then there are certain games that are built around like frame perfect, reliable, sequential input. An up event can't happen until a down event happen, and they're going to have unique glitches in that format and unique responsiveness problems.
I only ran across this recently because I use, for Quest streaming, I use a solution via Screen Copy, which is used for capturing an Android phone, usually's screen, sending those images. But it can do it in a serialized manner that is not a consistent time. It just basically cuts then sends. And the problem you get with, like, say, Quest streaming is it comes in and you get stutter. And so for someone watching, you're like, well, this is hiccuping every so often, doesn't feel fluid, doesn't feel natural. And you can actually fix that with some input buffer. And so for something like this, which must be part of the system from what I was feeling, I would say like racing games are out, right? I mean, and I had a pretty good experience. I did demonstrate it where I sat with the controller kind of live on feed on stream when I was showcasing this to an audience with a screen in front of me, so you could see when I moved my thumb and when the change happened in the picture that I was seeing on the virtual screen. It was not bad. I think a lot of games, even a game like Atomic Hearts or, like almost like a, I don't want to say FPS, but a first-person adventure type game, I think would work well. Anything with that refined timing, I think it wouldn't. But it did surprise me how good it was. I literally thought it would be unplayable, kind of like a shadow PC where certain game genres, like playing Peggle, it just doesn't matter, right? You're pulling a trigger at a certain point, the thing does its thing, and then you get another choice to shoot another ball. Latency doesn't matter for that type of thing. You want to play Quake 3, like no dice, right? So I'm impressed to see where it goes. I know we've got certain limits. Is this a viable, valuable product? I think it really is. I would go so far as to say that if you're just signing up for Game Pass, like definitely give it a trial before you put your money on the table. Take their 2-week demo and go give a couple games a shot. See if there's something that you like you can get on with. Because definitely about half of what's on their store doesn't feel comfortable to play, is the way I would put it.
Right.
But it's cool, and I'm glad their pairing with Microsoft is going deeper. I think that only means better things. That does also, however, mean, I suppose, more of a happy monopoly for Meta and Microsoft, which, as we said last year, is kind of a scary combination of companies. They have a lot of control.
I don't know if it kind of fell through the cracks, but Microsoft and in the leaks that Anton mentioned, one of the things that people didn't discuss when the cloud controller leaked also is that Microsoft is experimenting something called an adult controller, which is going to have it's going to, since you just mentioned it, that's going to be the monopoly, is that these controllers are going to be the console eventually, right? They're going to have special input to go over the internet for home use, but it's also going to have a way to back up your saves maybe directly to the controller. and that's going to be locked into your profile. You already do that with the Xbox One controller on your PC, where it does save your profile info on that on the controller, and if you move it to an Xbox One, it will have the same user information in some of those settings.
Huh.
So that's going to be
Didn't-
kind of the new ticket potentially for how games are played over the cloud. So I truly think that that's what Meta might really say. Oh, you want the best experience for cloud gaming? Use the cloud controller, and
I
they
was
might
a-
block Bluetooth eventually.
I was a little surprised, given we had this back with like the Rift days and that we didn't get the broken apart gamepad in the form of the touch controllers. Like that's not how it operates today. You have to have an external gamepad. So I hope they can find a way to bring that to us. I don't know if there's enough buttons to count for parity now in the current design. I'd have to think through that one.
You're down a bunch actually,
You're
because on
down,
the left
yeah.
you don't have a whole D-pad and a stick. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, maybe that's one for them to engineer out. But it would be interesting if they came with a dedicated controller. It's another accessory that's kind of outside of the main box, though, and then it's really hit and miss, just to have an accessory. Then what devs are going to support it? You get into the whole, dare I say it, the Knuckles situation that we had with the Valve Index, where dev support is so, again, piecemeal, title by title. So that's the Xbox gaming. With Anton here on the show, I wanted to take a moment to talk about H3 VR, the game that Zim can almost never pronounce correctly. So
Hand shoes and horse grenades.
Hot shoes, a horse grenade game.
Hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. Because I butchered it well. I did practice. So Anton, well, maybe Rowdy runs a trailer or some bits about the Institution update, which came out recently, and I had a good go with. Enjoyed my time. I was curious. Can you catch somebody up on your VR love child of a project of 7 odd years, and just summarize this? Maybe whet their appetite for your coming December update as well. Be curious.
Yeah, I mean, just for those who just don't know it all, like hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades, or H3 VR short, is I would say, game collection of various sorts of genre experiments, full size game modes. It's very much an iceberg of an experience, and that presents as one types of thing. Lots of people see footage of it, they think it's like, oh, it's a cool range simulator and a whole bunch of games. But because it has really been just an open development research platform in many ways over the years, there's significantly more content there than appears at the beginning. And really what binds all of those experiments and games together is a shared set of simulation systems and a massive library of content. There's over 500 firearms in
My
the
God.
game. There's hundreds of melee weapons, well over 100 throwables, tons of toys, props. Really, like, still, I think probably one of, if not the most sophisticated AI agent that's in a VR game. But like, that's a part of it that in many ways I'm most proud of, and has been part of an iterative set of experiments that stretches out back from before HMD VR even came out, when I really started doing indie game development. There's parts of the perceptual systems in the SOSIG, the 6-foot tall sentient hot dogs in H3, that predate the DK1 existing, that were from actually a 6DOF physics-based game. I wanted to make a Descent-esque game many years ago, and had started writing AI for that, and that evolved into what is in H3. But really, it's a game that has had different emphasis and focus over that 7 to 8 year period, in terms of experimenting wide in one direction, focusing on content in certain ways, making, there's one mode in there called Return of the Rotwieners that's like a 20 to 30 hour long, like, action RPG zombie game that was my attempt at, like, okay, I'm gonna make a very narrow cross section of like a Bethesda style kind of game, but in VR, to see how that would work. Turns out it was really hard. And then the stuff that has gotten my attention the most in the past year or two has been our game mode Taken Hold, which has had a competitive scene grow up in the H3 community. It's the hardest part of the game, in part because it's an action roguelike, and it uses, based upon which character you pick, a pretty tremendous percentage of the game's entire arsenal, and is throwing it at you semi-randomly. And so it's a game that demands really, really wide mastery of the entire game systems. And it is, from a challenge standpoint, it is combining the logics of typical action games, dudes come into a room shooting at you, you shoot back, and precision shooting. It's taking some of the target shooting challenge that you get in IPSC, USPSA sort of things, where you have complex shoot no shoot target combinations, but dressing them up in a sort of sci-fi way. But it's demanding sort of, you have the competing challenges of, I'm being spatially pressed by agents who are yelling at me and shooting at me, that is causing me to fight and move rapidly, while also having to pay attention to a complex target shooting situation, exercise trigger control, and make very precision shots under time pressure. So it is at its hardest, it is ludicrously hard. And the latest stuff that has gone into it has very much been a reflection of that. The competitive scene effectively solved the prior level that had been in there. Like they had honed it down to a single optimized meta, and were competing in this incredibly narrow band of scores. Like, I'm talking about differences of tenths of seconds to clearing targets and rooms. They had figured it out that much. And so very much the content that I've added more recently has been about destabilizing that meta entirely, and providing new axes of challenge by creating just more complex spaces, more complex combinations of threats that you have to deal with, in the hopes that it will take them years to figure out.
That's awesome.
That was really well done to summarize the game. I'm glad you said it. I definitely couldn't have done as good a job. What I remember maybe one of the first game modes that dropped into H3 VR was like a skee ball equivalent with grenades.
Boom
where
ski, which I
Boom
did
ski.
remake. There's new boom ski in the game now.
Okay. I could tell. So when you load into the game, you actually get a wall of options, with take and hold being front and center, boom ski being there. It did catch my eye. I'm gonna have to go back into that. But basically, you pull a pin, you throw a grenade down a skee ball kind of chute. It goes up and it detonates, and you're trying to take out some targets. And I found that loads of fun back in the day. But what you've created since, it feels like every holiday, whether it be a Halloween or a Christmas time, you just keep dropping these games, honestly. And what I have not been able to reconcile the whole way along, Anton, is how the heck do you how the heck do you stay alive with game sales off of, I mean, someone pays a ticket price, and then that's it. It seems like that's it. They've paid their $20 or whatever, and then they're on for the journey for 7 years of goodness. And like you just mentioned a mode that I absolutely want to go and try, that 30-hour saga. That sounds really cool and up my alley. But like, how does that work out for you? Surely you're shooting yourself in the foot financially without just selling these as like separate games. I mean, does it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's what I joke that like we're all idiots and that we made a live service game that you pay for once, sort of thing. But part of it, if you're asking like how have we survived as a studio and made this work in a really big way, is that just like we don't spend any money. Like this is like H3 has always been a game that was created under the lean constraints of the things that we could produce ourselves efficiently, find economical licenses for. There's been a lot of donated labor into the game over the years. Like, you make a big passion project and you open dev it, you will have lots of people showing up. Like, I remember in the first couple months of H3, I had 3D modeler, like weapon 3D modelers showing up, literally being like, "Hey, would you like my gun? I have made it as gun as it can be made by me. Can you make it the rest of the way gun in your game?" And I'd be like, yes, sort of thing. So like, yeah, that's definitely been a
That's so
component of
cool.
it, but it's just like lean development, not building like H3 is super noisy and all over the place from what you would consider the traditional values of polish in a game. And I generally reject those sorts of things. I reject the sort of notion that you need to have consistency on those things and that you
Mm.
need to just like spend money on things because people spend money on them, or because that gives the product some sort of like intrinsic aspirational value, sort of thing. So the fidelity of everything in H3 is exactly what it needs to be for that given thing. I'm very like, it has a wide mixture of aesthetics. Guns are drawn and rendered very realistically. Certain parts of
Oh,
the game are
it's
very cartoonish. Certain parts of it are, I like to call it sort of like Source Engine 1 chic, which is just my favorite. Like, I pull up a Half-Life 2 screenshot personally, and I'm like, "Ugh, that is all a game needs to look like."
yeah.
Somewhere between Half-Life 2 and Mirror's Edge, and outside of that band, I don't give a fuck. Like, any graphical advancement past that point, I'm like, whatever, I don't care. Like,
You got a
so
point.
I just don't. I can't. I don't care, and I can't be made to care.
Uh,
Just like more polys because it's an object that's this close to your face and it's interactive, and I can richly manipulate it. Awesome. Does it need ray tracing? I don't care. And
I,
so that's been a big part of keeping H3 going, is just knowing exactly what the product needs to exist, and nothing past that. And then beyond that, just it's an absurd value. Like our continued sales has just been about the fact that like there are very few games that like straight up, like if you just were like, I'm gonna pull every gun out in this game and load it and see how it fires and figure out the buttons, how many gameplay hours is that? It's more gameplay hours than pretty much any VR game.
Yeah.
yeah.
Sort of thing.
And
And you
someone
can just go buy it and pay $20 for it. And so it's an obvious purchase for a lot of people who are just looking for good value per
and
dollar.
that's number one. If I was to try to sell the game to someone, this is what I would say. Between the nuances and the detail in this game are at like, I'm a simmer. I love all different types of simulation in VR in particular. Loading an individual bullet into a mag, for example. The actual safety on the gun, the way that the trigger feels on the variety of weapons, and just how it physically actuates. All of those little nuances feel like I'm in an art house of a gun lover. Like, it just, and I look at the model and I go, hot damn.
Yeah. It's
And you say the
again,
number 500 and
yeah.
it boggles my brain.
It's again what we said in the
Alone.
beginning. It's just that attention to detail
Yep.
is so so far and so wide that it's like, it almost indeed becomes like, you'd be stupid not to purchase the game, because you get so much value. And I honestly think that, because I mean, you've been doing it for so long now, you define basically how guns work in virtual reality. There's no other game that I think that hasn't tried, if they have guns, that hasn't tried H3 VR to see how it should be done. And not only the mechanics of the gun and the physics and like the physics of the game in general, but also just the sound design of the guns is something that it's very clear that you spend a lot of time on as well.
Yeah, like a lot of people will look at a benchmark out there and they'll go like, oh, I play Onward or I play Contractors or something. Like, that feels like such an arcade experience compared to what H3 VR brings. And it's hard for me to articulate, but it's those smaller details in it. And then this stupid amount of content. It's literally like, I don't know where to turn, honestly, when I go into it and I pick a mode and I go have fun. But then
Which
it's
is a
such
problem for us in a big
Yeah,
way,
it
because a
is.
lot of people like get decision paralysis with it, or they've seen some content of someone playing Take and Hold, and they think that's what H3 is, and they have like no idea. They might, even though I've tried to put it like there's games here and there's sandboxes here, like they might just look up at the tile there and see like Worst World, what's that, and not realize like that's still still the full length of many whole VR games. That's just a like puzzle adventure game where you walk around an amusement park and listen to audio logs and figure out shooting puzzles and things like that. And it's a whole experience, and it tells a little goofy comedy story. sort of thing. And it's difficult in certain ways because like people who are looking to go buy a gun game are not necessarily looking to buy that, although if they realize it's there, they then may actually play it and be like, that was a cool fun thing. And so a lot of these things got a lot of play when we released them, and there was a lot of attention on them and people knew to find them. But because most people don't expect to buy a game and find a library of games inside it, they don't know to look for it, they don't know how to prime themselves for
Yeah.
it. And I
It's
certainly
it's
and
your
I
own
and
it's
I'm
your
and
own
I'm
Fortnite. Like that's Fortnite's got like 70 Roblox has 70 different things. Like that's what it is. You made your own ecosystem um through your development journey. And I'm still not aghast, but I'm just kind of shocked that you've kind of stuck with it this far with no spin-offs, no separate second project. So I just have to say thank you for that, because there's something very special about someone kind of looking at their VR love child, their project, whatever it is, and just throwing themselves at it constantly. It's just passion. It's just the passion strung out over time, and the fact that you were able to do it and survive over these years is wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. It's a really Christmas feeling that I have around that whole idea, and I hope more devs do that.
I've been fortunate to do it, and it's like it's I'm in an environment that just completely supports me to do it. I work with my best friends in the world
Yeah.
on it, and we are as close as family. Sometimes for better and for worse. Like that can be a more complicated emotional thing to navigate, but it's so creatively rewarding. Like I can't, to be with work with people who each other so long that you complete each other's jokes and you complete each other's creative ideas just as much. You are in sync in that way. And it's been a privilege to be able to, like, I still can't believe that I get to do this. Like it's on paper it's utterly ridiculous.
That's the best
Um,
job, when you feel like you're cheating the system. Best job you can
Yeah.
have. I got a stupid question to ask on behalf of vegetarians who might pick up a hot dog related title. Is there any mode that turns the hot dogs into cucumbers or something for someone who's like sensitive to
Let me
meat?
ask you this.
No, but there is well, but because I know when I found out that there were certain people who, because of the jovial quality of it, were having kids play it, and that those kids might even have younger siblings, I decided to put in, there's something called clown mode that you can enable that actually removes all of the gushy gore from the game. It puts a little red clown nose on every SOSIG, and all of the like mustard explosions are replaced with red, white, and blue confetti that makes like a kazoo noise. And it's like
God.
every
That's
single
awesome.
time, which is fantastic because every now and again, someone playing around with the options without realizing it will accidentally turn on clown mode. They'll go in and play a game, and all of a sudden, all the Sosigs will have red nose and be making canoe, and they'll like come over the forums like panic, like, "What's wrong with my game? They're all like clowns, and there's confetti blood. What's going on? Is this an event?" Sort of thing. Like, "Oh no, you just turned on clown mode," and they'll be like, "What?"
That's
but that's-
awesome.
It's brilliant.
I'm glad I asked that question. I know Adam had a specific, before we launch into the debate section. Adam, do you have a specific question hinged around the upcoming event, perhaps?
Yes, I think I know the answer now because you've had a big update recently, but no Christmas love, no Christmas advent calendar snow globe things this year? Or
The
can you not
advent
say?
calendar is every other year, sort of thing. So there will be Meet Miss Day gifts on like in the snow, like definitely log into the snow globe on Christmas Day. There'll be stuff there, and I'm still figuring out the exact. So it'll be slightly larger than the at like in the advent calendar. It's stuff for December 1st through 24th, and then some stuff on the day, and then every other year I take a break from that because it grinds me
I
into
imagine,
the
yeah.
ground. And it's sort of like I love doing it, but it's definitely like this heavy chain that I bear, in part because like I did it the first year as a one-off sort of thing, and I was and it direct, like I got a repetitive stress injury in my arm that has never healed.
Oh,
That first year I screwed up my like elbow, shoulder, and
Oh,
shoulder
no.
blade from just working so much, and I've never really recovered from it. and so that had been planned to be a one-off thing, and then the response I got to it was so incredible, including a bunch of people that were like, "You were the only one who got me anything for Christmas this year," and like had a bunch of people who were like going through really hard life, like dire hard life stuff, and they were like, "They're having a thing to do every day in December," sort of thing. Like say like and I was like, well, I guess I'm just gonna be doing this from now on, sort of thing.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
I
So
love that.
I've just sort of like done it ever since, and it's at the same time like I love like when I started working on H3, when we were figuring out what we were doing in those first couple months, and I like said I remember saying to the guys, I was like, wait, we have a video game now, which means I get to do holiday updates for that
Hell yeah.
video game. I was so excited because have always been my favorite. Like when TF2 would do its holiday
yeah.
content, that's my
Yes.
favorite because it's the temporality of it
Yeah.
that makes the game world feel more real. The fact that time too is passing in that world and that things can exist for a while and they're ephemeral and we all get to have a shared experience and then they're over and it's only in our memories at that moment. That was what was super inspiring to me as a developer early on. And so that was why I threw so much energy into our holiday update content right from the beginning. It was the stuff I was just most jazzed about.
God, I'm resonating on many levels with not just the concept, but the development design decisions. I feel like VR could do a little bit more of that, like bring the live concert hall show feel, the pop up on the corner street musician vibe into what we can experience together. And it doesn't have to stay forever. I think it's one of the beauties of us actually being humans is that, inevitably our memory goes and we die and we're dust, and the idea is the temporary nature brings something special about. So it's time for us to move on to. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and it was, and just on a very personal note, like it broke me of being a humbug about the holidays. Like I had a very
Yes.
sour relationship to Christmas and the winter holidays because of just like difficult family stuff
Yeah.
growing up and that sort of drama. And I was just the ultimate Grinch about it. Like I would hear Christmas music and I would get angry for most of my 20s. And the process of doing these holiday updates like reconnected me with the part of the whole thing that was
Wow.
actually beautiful.
Damn.
Sort of thing. So total 180 about, as you can't tell from the having a tree here, like I did a 180. I look forward to it. I broke this out early enough that people were like, really? We're already at a Christmas tree and it's November. Like, and I was like, I didn't draw first blood on it. Okay. The people on the
Blame
street
Mariah
already put up
Carey.
there. I saw lights walking around at night. So I was like, yes, I can do it.
That's awesome. And I know you get endorsements straight from our festival ass. Adam is big into
I
that stuff
approve.
herself. Yeah.
That's the solution. Everyone just make a video game and then you'll love Christmas again. I
Exactly.
don't know if it's that easy, but
Should we go to
If
some
you
questions,
survive.
or- Should we go to some
Yeah, so-
questions then? I have a
well,
couple
so-
that I spotted, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna give a kind of introduction to this part because we've engineered a new segment into the show. Okay, so for those of you who've been fans of FReality over the last 5 years and so, where we've had guests on before, it's been very kind of interview centric, I'll say. This is an open guest debate featuring our prominent and notably opinionated guest Anton Hand. For those who joined us a bit later into the show. This is not going to be an interview format, as you've seen so far. We're trying to do something different. And the idea here is that you get to know Anton better. We get to know Anton better. He gets to know us. While we share our opinions, as if you were at a party and happened to elbow your way into a conversation, and we're listening in eagerly. And we want you to participate as well. You're welcome to do the same. Spike us questions. Rowdy says you already have done some. If you haven't yet, just throw them into chat. Crew, Anton, same deal for you guys. If you think of something to ask, please spike it out there. I know we're running long on the show already, but I'll tell you what, we're going to get through some questions. So we'll just going to try to hold our tongue a little bit and then go through this, right? This is going to be VR debate volleyball. So time to get your Speedos and bikini tops on. We're going to go eat some sand. Before we get going, and before we take questions from chat, to let them kind of queue up a little bit, and thanks, Rowdy, for keeping an eye on that, to break the ice here, and us getting to know each other before we go to battle. Question 0, because in Devland, 0, not 1. Pick a thing off your desk or from your studio. And this is a bit of a show and tell. I want you to say to us, like, what does it mean to you? Where's it from? Point on the doll to where they touched you, whatever. Just show us something in your environment that matters. And I'm going to take a quick moment to go fetch mine.
I didn't plan this very well.
Yeah, me either.
Me neither, but I mean, I have something.
Something that's meaningful to me.
I think I have something that'll work.
All right. Rowdy, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So this is a USB stick. I actually have two, but I think it's this one. And on this USB stick, like I often, like as many people work, I often work in a Linux environment. But I work in like, like with the root operating system. And every once in a while, when you're doing your big cleanup or something like that, or you mess up your operating system, and if you mess something up with your Linux operating system, you're screwed. There's a lot that can go wrong. So I have this USB stick handy, which is like a live OS version, which allows me to just reset everything to its original state. So this is something that I don't need it a lot, but I do keep it close in case I need it.
Does it have a name?
Data Traveler 100.
Give it a better name.
What's your distro?
The one I use, I've used multiple. I started out with like a Manjaro. That is one thing that I've used a lot. But I recently a couple of years ago, I switched over to Ubuntu just because of the widespread kind of use of it. Yeah.
Drivers, yeah.
Oh, very good. Who wants to go next? Thanks, Rowdy.
I can go.
Yep.
I got something. This is my What Makes Me Feel Important boss lady plaque with my name on it.
Oh, hell yeah.
This I
That's
actually
brilliant.
got. I went to. I did a live stream at DreamHack, like I don't know, many, many, many years ago when I actually still did live streaming, which I don't do anymore because it's too time consuming. And what's fantastic about this is, I mean, it wasn't just me who got this. It was every streamer who live streamed there, and it was actually made by a different Twitch streamer. So I'm like, holy
Wow.
crap, he made these all. I don't know, there was at least like 50 plus of us made
Holy-
these individually for all of us, didn't know any of us by hand. I'm assuming he probably live streamed it. I would. But I was like, that is such a cool thing to do for a bunch of people you don't know and probably don't care about. But either way, it was a really cool thing to have. We got to, put it on our little computers as we streamed, and then we got to take it home. So now it makes me feel important when I put it in front of, in case I ever forget what my name is, I can put it right in front of my monitor and be like, oh yeah, who are you? Anabomb Body. There we go. My little motivational thing.
That's lovely. Touched by a human. That's an important one. Jose, you want to go next?
Yeah, I was thinking I guess the Valve Index. It's one of those headsets that I can't just ever walk away from. I have 4 of them. I've been thinking about like refurbishing these and putting them up for sale, giving them to somebody that actually uses them or want to use them, but it's not my daily driver anymore. I'm an XR Elite user, but there's something about wired connectivity, right? There's something there. We were talking about cloud streaming earlier, but there's no. I mean, I'm hoping that knock on wood that we do get that answered fairly soon. But there's something that disconnect is still there, right? And there's something about going back to wired VR that I just can't let go of. Like I have, like, obviously when compared this to an XR Elite, right? The optics, all of it is just, it's not there, but it's just like, but that wire latency. So yeah, I think that's
Awesome.
little-
Index is an incredible headset. So
yeah.
good choice. Anton, what about you?
I've got something a little strange. This is a small oil painting that was given to me
Zoom in on
by
this.
an artist friend who has worked on the game, has done some stuff for H3. This is a Tyraler spec. The painting's by a wonderful gentleman named Horst Peter, who lives in Austria. And I actually, because I went to a development conference in April in Dubrovnik, my first time ever going to Europe. It was
Wow.
a huge trip for me. It was me like coming out of my like COVID shell. It was very like getting over agoraphobia. So the whole trip was sort of like a whole bunch of very important firsts for me, and was in a big way like me waking back up as a person and being like, I want to keep making things and being a part of this ecosystem and all of that, but getting this wonderful little piece from getting to meet him in person for the first time.
Awesome.
Uh, and
love
just getting
that.
a beautiful
What
piece
is,
of art.
maybe
from
for
him.
the audio listeners, describe what is painted on there.
Tiraler speck. It's a type of cured meat. I actually, I don't know if I got to try this one actually when I was over there. Austria, of course, has a whole bunch of sausages and types of cured meats that are unique to them.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. I actually went meat shopping with him to you go some places. Wild going to a meat shop there because you go in and absolutely everything that's in the case is like made by that family.
Yeah.
And it's like it was like I looked up the place ahead of time. It was like the two daughters and their father, and the shop had
Oh,
been
wow.
around for decades
Wow.
and decades. And it was wild because like they didn't speak very much English, and he was
No.
helping me order things, and they were clearly a little confused. Like, what is this American here who's clearly excited to get these various meat things and knows what they are? But it was just a delightful
So
time.
awesome.
That's me. I'm always on brand.
Yeah, and speaking of that, he was talking about his SPAS 12 he had in the back, and I just am thinking that whoever, like, some poor bastard breaks into Anton's house, sees an aircraft shotgun, and then pictures of sliced meat framed in his wall. I mean, this is a Dexter moment for sure. And the Christmas tree does not help that puzzle. I think that only worsens, it only exacerbates it.
And
So-
what's really funny on that issue of like someone hypothetical on someone breaking in, I have thought about this because I obviously have real firearms, and those are like stored and stowed and locked very well. I've got toy ones that are out in the like hopes that someone would steal that, but I have mixed one real firearm in there because it's a terrible piece of crap Browning Buck Mark III that everything is wrong with. I cannot seem to fix it. I can't get it to fire reliably, not jam constantly. The magazine gets stuck in it. So I hope if someone ever breaks into my apartment that they steal that damn thing from me so that it's finally no longer my problem.
Oh no, I don't see it. I don't see you stealing anything.
And even in just telling that, Anton, you basically have set up what you have in H3VR, what you have in Taken Hold in your own home. So there you are with your own piece. They're scrounging around randomized weapons, not entirely randomized, and they have a chance of grabbing a winner, and just potentially that shot goes off, in which case they've won the game. But
Or have they?
wow. That's a good question. Maybe they've been cursed. But it's really funny here. So we've got two pieces of hardware and two pieces of like
don't bring your
fanfare.
kid now. Like be like, this is what is precious to me. Like,
no, not my child. They stay
No.
out of the studio. It's this. This is a 3D printed Skyrim quest marker.
One of those.
Of which I have two. This was gifted to me by the wonderful gentleman, Dr. Oculus, who's been a VR creator for many years. I got to meet him, and on our first meeting, he brought this along.
That's
Hugged me
awesome.
like he was Hodor from Game of Thrones, because he's a big lad. And yeah, what can I say? Every time I come down to my studio, I see this, and it's actually just over my camera. Every time I'm eye on with the camera, this is what I'm looking at, actually. So now you know my little secret. But Doc, thank you so much. He was a champ like that. And there's just something special about those, I'll call them from a human, unexpected gifts that are just so goddamn touching.
Yeah.
So, and it seems to be a common point that we have here. So on to question time. I'm going to go ahead and I'll start us off with one, but then let's interleave and like jump into questions from others. Now I have 8. I don't know if we're going to get through 8, including the audience and stuff. But let's see. I don't know how deep we're going to go. We might stay quite surface level with these things. So for the first one, this one's more of a round table than like a debate point. But what I want you to do, this is like a warm-up exercise. So the crew, including Anton, I want you to be devil's advocate here, whether naturally or unnaturally for you. We're going to go around the horn. Your favorite VR game and why? And then we're going to challenge you on it. Okay? So that's the deal. I know it's a tough one, and because I'm just spiking this to you now, I'm going to start, because people generally know what my favorite VR game is, which is No Man's Sky. I'm a big, big fan, fell into love with that this year on PSVR 2. The reason why I love it, 2 things I'll say. I ran across a ship, a broken-ass ship, called the Eagle of Sleep, just in my first couple of hours in the game. Spent 30 hours repairing it. I loved that was that kind of personal element to me. I could make it my own. I really had to struggle to fix the thing. It really took me weeks and weeks to do it. And the fact that I can be in there with my wife and my kids with their own like bases on our home planet, in that headset with lighting like no other headset, I feel like I'm there, I'm on vacation, and that's why, personally, No Man's Sky is my top VR game of all time. And we know it dethroned Skyrim not long ago. So that's me. Poke holes in it, if you will, from what you know about the game or whatever. Like, I'm curious to challenge it from the other side of the table.
It's not a VR game.
That's
Not
what
a
I
VR
was,
game.
It's not a VR game. That's what I was going to say.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
Next one.
That hurts. That hurts, Jose.
I don't know.
I mean,
My-
I saw someone mention it earlier about we were talking about new user, how easy it is to start off a game. I actually started that game. I don't think I played it on VR yet, but even on desktop, when I first played it after they did all the updates or it wasn't crap, I think I dropped off eventually because it was just too confusing in the beginning. So that'd be my feedback. Is it's like you need to dedicate
Spend
a lot of
time.
time to
Yeah,
learning
for
and
sure.
flying and figuring out all the alien languages and stuff. And why do I care about these alien languages? I'm
That's
not
Sim
really
in a
sure.
nutshell, basically.
It is.
You spent like 140 hours in Skyrim without completing like a single part of the main quest.
I like going in and wandering, having to wander in that. But it's a fair point that it is not a made for VR game. It shows having to toggle on the HUD on and off again and on again, off again in a 4-click process has kind of driven me insane. But yeah, love it. It's really good. And I like the PDs shouting out. There has been a particle patch to it, so the game kind of looks pretty immaculate now. Anyway, so that was my one. Who wants to go next?
I can go next. I mean, as all of you know, like I have two big game genres which I really enjoy. One of them is strategy games. I love Age of Empires 2. I still play that a lot, but unfortunately, there's not a lot of strategy games in VR. But the other one that I really like is survival games. Survival games is something that I just like a lot. And one of the games, I mean, it is my favorite game because it's a sort of like a nostalgia feeling. And I brought it up before on the podcast. It's probably not up to date anymore. I don't even know if it's developed anymore because it was an indie studio. That was Star Shelter. You guys, does anyone remember Star Shelter?
Yeah, I remember it.
I thought that game, like, that ticked a lot of boxes for me. It was very early days. It came out, because I just looked it up. When was it now? It came out in 2017. So it's an older game, but they did a lot of stuff I felt right. It was that tension of like, you could die any moment. You were basically in 0G gravity. You had to find your own oxygen. You had to, get plants going and stuff like that. I wouldn't say it was a complicated game, but it was something that always stuck by me, and I always wanted this game to become even bigger. So I would say that is probably my favorite indie VR game that I've seen, that I've played. Yeah.
No one's really tried that since, right? So it's almost.
I would be surprised if it's still,
in active development.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go back and you're like, what? Like I remember coming across Pierhead Arcade, and this was before the guy was just pushing a quest build, and I was like, what? 5 years later, you're still doing the same thing? So sometimes you do run across that. Cough, cough, Anton. But anyway, still into the same stuff. The only thing I would say to you, Rowdy, is I'd probably pick on the visuals.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
it could run on a Switch.
Visually, but then again, like
I mean, actually no, because it looks like they've got SSAO enabled or some shadowing in there. So it's just because something looks primitive does not mean that it's cheap to render.
Okay, let's hold on to that thought.
Covered with the quest.
Yeah.
Let's hold on to that thought before I say my game then, because we were talking about earlier about mobile games that
don't say
translate into
Diablo
VR.
mobile. No.
Oh no, where are you going?
No. Oh geez, no. Favorite VR game? You said favorite of all time, right?
Sure, yeah.
Angry Birds VR.
I was right.
I
Wow.
think that converted from mobile to VR in such a powerful way. I'm hoping for a mixed reality update of that.
Wow.
But I think that the experimentation, having to navigating the slingshot, very basic mechanics, but that translated. It's one of the first games I remember buying early on and finishing the entire game 3 stars all the way through from the moment I purchased the game.
3
Wow.
stars,
10
baby.
Yeah, 3 stars. And every single board, I think it was like 8 hours later, I was like, oh, geez, I didn't intend to beat the whole game. But I would say that's a game that I definitely enjoy.
Dude, that's resolution games right there. I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
even say bad things about it other than it's
Yeah.
just, it's one of those like games that a studio picks up and they're like, we need money. So let's go to an IP and
I'm
deliver.
definitely not. I mean, it's not a game I would enjoy. Like, it's not something for me, like, at all.
That's so good. It's so satisfying hitting those, like when you hit that little turbo button and you actually see them like hone in.
It's like it feels to me a little bit like we talked about that a couple of shows ago. Those cookie clickers, like you just
oh
keep on,
yeah,
like that kind of stuff.
Oh man.
Ah.
yeah,
Is
yeah,
there a
yeah.
Cookie Clicker VR game?
Yes. There's the one they call Increment. I'm not sure if it came out, but there was a demo on the Steam VR and it was so good. I thought he was meant to launch it by now, but I haven't seen it. So look up Increment. It's really good. And there was actually another Angry Birds VR game before Angry Birds came out. There was a game that I thought was better than Resolution's interpretation of Angry Birds. So I will look that up for you later, Jose, and sick you on that game. Yeah. What about you, Adam?
I think for me, it might also be nostalgic, but it's the first Arizona Sunshine. And I'm not saying Arizona Sunshine 2 is worse, but I feel like there was something about that was besides Half-Life Alyx, whatever, that was my first like co-op shooter adventure. And I think by the time I played it, it had more DLCs, so there was just so much story you could go through and play. And I went through the whole thing with my husband, and it was like a lot of in VR and out of VR arguments after, but it's fine, we're still married. But yeah, I would say Arizona Sunshine for nostalgia and just being one of the first, and then of course many zombie shooters followed after. But
It's funny how we all, like, not per se choose like the best VR games, but all like have some kind of emotional connection with game that we've played or something that we felt when we were playing it. Not per se that it was therefore the best virtuality game, but more like
Angry Birds speak for itself. Angry Birds is definitely not good.
Oh yeah, like the thing I was gonna say to Adam is legs. Bloody hell! I remember the funky ass legs in Arizona Sunshine as you were walking, but it was like one of the first games which you could
It
be
was-
like full body
yeah.
with a
it was
buddy.
cool at the time. You were like, "Whoa, I have a virtual body!" Before you realized like how janky and weird it was, and then it got a little worse, and then it got a little better. I don't know. It's still up for debate, but it was cool. Like that
It's a
was
beautiful game.
I actually the first shooter game in VR that I really felt immersed in. But yeah, I mean, I was otherwise it's like Half-Life Alyx, but I feel like that's the shoe-in obvious. Like, my favorite game's Half-Life Alyx. Yeah, it's everyone's favorite game.
yeah.
Not everyone's favorite game. All right, Anton, what's yours?
I have to split my answer on the question because the I have my best that is a actual VR exclusive game versus the best game that I've played in VR, and they're not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah.
So like my favorite VR exclusive game by like a country mile is Walkabout Mini Golf.
Oh.
Like
Good pick.
Nice.
How do you
Like-
take that one
like-
apart even?
like just like it instantaneous. It's there isn't even a close second. It's just like I feel like my blood pressure comes down 20 points just opening into it. Like just like especially the one Coyote Valley is my favorite level
Yeah.
of the whole
Nice
one
pick.
with the like the slowly moving windmills and the rolling hills and the
Yeah.
cute little sheep up there. I'm just like
Zen.
I'm okay again. When that one and the Arizona are the two ranges that I play the most in them, and it's my happy place. And then just proud like if I expand it to games that just have VR support, it's Elite Dangerous.
Ooh.
I've put like 300 hours into playing it. Like the first time when I finally got like system access to the Sol system
Yeah.
in the game and actually was able to do like flybys of our actual solar system, I started crying in my headset. It was just such a powerful experience
That's
for me
amazing.
because it's just the way that they handle speed and scale. It's just once you've been in it for a certain amount, your brain, like the illusion is complete.
Yeah.
Like everything feels exactly as big as it actually is in real life. And as someone who just like grew up being obsessed with space and
Yeah.
things like that, the first time that I went around like all the yeah
Yeah, man.
one of a kind. It's a perfect. I played the entire thing with a Thrustmaster
HOTAS,
16,000 HOTAS setup, and I set up a bunch of the like Steam VR desktop stuff, and I would do trucking runs on Sundays when NFL football would be on. So I would drag the window with the foot, and I lined it up so it was exactly on a blank panel in the dashboard in the
God,
ship,
that's so
and
smart.
so I'd just be like watching football and just like doing mining runs in
That's
my ship
brilliant. Yeah.
all
This
for like I did that for like a whole football season sort of thing, and it was incredible. I've never felt so transported to another place that felt real and like internally consistent
Yeah,
as because
but they did.
you never do anything that breaks the illusion. You never leave the cockpit. So
Yep.
I was one to one with where my body was. I moved the joystick system to roughly where it was. And so I was just dealing with a lot of anxiety at the time. And so it was perfect pure dissociation. It felt like VR fulfilling every single one of the things that we talk about that like transportation to another place, total immersion. It was perfect.
And they did that in 2014. I like you, cried in the headset. That's actually, you probably didn't know this, but that's how I kind of got on the map. Reddit picked me up, sobbing away in the headset on an early inaugural stream when they took the servers down. I was in the headset. I can't poke holes in Elite right now. I mean, I do find
Yeah.
that it's a puddle of a game. For
And
me,
they
it's like
gave
a mile wide.
like the newer updates and stuff, you can't, because they wanted to do like I'm walking around as a person. You can't play those components of the game in VR. So Elite is less of a VR game now than it was
Yeah.
4 years ago.
They also made it easier. Like, I don't know if you were in there right when it was like, $80 or something to get the early access. The ships, when you docked them, if you missed on your landing, you'd blow your ship up. And then they made it easier later on, and you could get systems that would auto dock you and things. But I love the fact
Cowards use auto dock.
exactly. Thank
the
you.
That's the best experience. Like, especially if you're flying one of the biggest ships that barely fits in there.
Anaconda. Fit an anaconda in that hole.
One of a kind. Like docking
Wow.
in Elite is
Sorry,
more
Adam.
interesting than many entire VR games.
It's very good. Okay, well that failed my mission of us ripping holes in things. It just got way too emotional. So let's go to some questions from the chat then, Rowdy.
Yeah. I
you
had
wouldn't mind.
well, I mean, there were a question for Anton, of
Debate
course.
points or whatever.
Yeah,
Sure.
like there was one comment from Blair Anti-Cleric who I thought was really nice. What I wanted to bring up money isn't the only thing that motivates people, and people sometimes have different kinds of morals, which I think was a nice. I was in this section where we were talking about what kept you afloat or what kept you going. So I thought that was maybe a nice thing to bring up. Another nice comment that I saw was from Sean Lewis, who said, "I'm going to play H3 VR as soon as this stream ends. So we better cut it short."
There's no cutting it short at this point.
Yeah.
Everything's cutting long at this stage.
Exactly. And then there were 3 questions. I'll just read out maybe the biggest one, which was from and a more serious one, Thomas McNostril, who said, "Why did you always want it to be a gun simulator rather than a murder simulator? The second option might have brought you more money." Then again, it comes down to the money question.
So there's a couple ways to go with this one. So the first one is sort of asking like, what was the game to begin with in the first place? Like why did the game exist at all? And so I've been doing VR for a very long time. I did a whole round of this all before HMD VR was popularized back in like 2004 through 2008 at the University of Buffalo. It was cave style VR. So like big projector screen,
Yeah.
projectors behind the screen, magnetic tracking that worked basically same technology that the Razer Hydra used,
Yep.
but slightly longer range because the antenna was literally like 4.5 feet wide. And so it could detect things accurately about 4 feet away from it. And I had made back in that system as my like undergrad thesis project a rail shooter, and had been doing because you had to track. I probably am the first person who ever did a hand tracked like rail shooter game
Wow.
in VR. And basically it had 4 guns. You had like a pistol where you actually like used the other controller and pulled the slide back and would load a mag. There was a shotgun you had to pump, then load individual shells into. There was a bullpup assault rifle that you took like an energy mag off the back, and a minigun that you had to like put a box on and like raise a simple belt box.
And this was in
this was very
2008.
2004.
2004. Okay,
Jesus.
wow, okay.
Jesus.
It was
I'm
running
so-
on like OpenGL Performer. The entire game was like 20,000 tries, maybe. Because it was like running on a Linux box for the separate for tracking. Yeah, it was not. It was. I was stressing it out to a big degree. And so when hand tracked VR started, and I got access to a Vive developer kit, the first thing I sat down to do was like, I'm proficient in Unity. I know how Unity physics work. I wanted to give myself a waypoint from where I had been to where like what this was possible then, what is possible now. And that's why I started with a group. I built basically a break action shotgun and a pistol with a magazine, precisely just to be like, all right, can I make it so I put the rounds in the mag individually? Can I the early system was even more janky than current H3. Like in the Unity scene graph, those were real full featured physics rigid body rounds in the mag, and it actually like unparented it and moved it in the gun into place as a
Wow.
full object. It wasn't trickery in the same way that it is now to run faster. But I would just want to see where it would fall down, where it would break. And so the project's inception was just about like how sophisticated of a simulated virtual object works. And then from there going like, is that actually fun? Can
Yeah.
you, when you smush that against this genre and this genre and this genre and this genre, does it work? Is it compelling? Do all these new design problems crop up? And then beyond that, like just like the group that I work with and like the type of art that like we made art games for years prior to H3. Like we tended to make very politically charged projects. We tended to make things that were in position either against or orthogonal to a lot of what was occurring in the games industry. So we didn't want to uncritically replicate a lot of the semiotic and rhetorical cruft that tends to come with games, both because just in VR things are more visceral, but also just because we were making a sandbox game, and a sandbox game you tend to you have context loss in a really big way. Like it's not like I'm telling this story that's about World War II, that's about this thing that happened, and that's why there's violence here, and there's context for what is going
Right.
on. It's a sandbox space. And so we were very cognizant from the you just put a neutral person in a game, and you're like, here's the person you come in and shoot. By default, everything about the way that person looks and the context now matters, because you're essentially saying, here is a person who is here for you to shoot and to derive entertainment from. And so it was one of those things that we were like, nah, that isn't what we want to make. And then even involve like what the SOSIGs as they came together, as I made them as agents. I had a very, an impactful, like the first thing I did is I made their bodies, and then I made them able to stand, and then I made them able to like fall down as rigid bodies and like be blasted apart. And I remember on that like day one of getting that all and shooting it, and it shuddered and fell over. No voice, no face, no nothing. And I had this visceral feeling of like, that felt like killing something in a way that was in part because of the way that we read animate behavior onto abstract things. And the very next thing I did was I actually sat down with a Google Doc and started writing funny lines for them, and I recorded the first vocal set for them almost immediately, because I was like, I need to make this not feel depressing when I shoot one of these things. And that was where the inception of the Sosig meta character, that they recognize that they are characters in a game, that you are engaging in play with them. They are simultaneously aware that they are playing this role and will speak from that, but are also aware that it's why all of their like death sounds are like, good one, buddy. One hurt. They pun and they riff off their own destruction. They're aware that they're just going to get like poured back into a new tube, because I wanted to make something that was play, that you're
Yeah.
that you're in, get that wasn't this like visceral, angry, hateful thing, because I don't, the world's fucking hard and terrible enough. Like I don't need that. It was as much a selfish thing as anything. Like if I'm going to be sitting here for 8 to 12 hours a day, I don't want to be basting in that mood and that tenor for 8 to 12 hours a day. That's not going to be good for my mental health. And
Yeah,
that's just
no.
not pleasurable. Like instead I have a whole bunch of like meaty special needs children that are like fumble their guns and are like, oh, what's going on? You know,
Yeah,
and
anyone who has a particular perchant against clowns now has an out for
you
that
go.
feeling, you know. So maybe you got there in the end anyway. But no, it's lovely,
But-
lovely background to that.
But to the refrain of like, could we have made more money? Like, I mean, maybe like if we had made a different sort of, but like there's 100 different decisions we could have forked on and made something that was more aggressively optimized to make revenue. We could have just like sold the company several times during the sort of boom, and then just had golden handcuffs working for a big tech company. Like I could have like picked something less stupid from a financial risk model standpoint to make a living for than making a video game if I wanted to make more money. So
Yeah.
it's one of those like yes, but I don't think that's necessary. Like if you're making decisions over what's going to make you the
Yeah.
most money and you're making a video game, like you've already failed right off the bat. Like
Yep.
you should be writing banking software. Like if that's what you care about, like if you can code and that's what you want to optimize for, there's all of the non-sexy industries where we have a world that runs on software. Like, you know, you like if you're in this medium, you should be here because you want to like realize a world that hasn't existed. Like
I
you
feel
know,
like that
why-
echoes true to a lot of industries where if you're in it just for the money, then get out and
Get
find
out.
something that pays better. You know, like with that, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna bring up one debate point. I'm gonna scrap the rest of mine just because of time, and we can maybe have Anton back one day. So this is a group of 5 people, and the point I want us to debate is this. There's a magic genie that appears and grants us a wish. One wish. This is VR related. We get to change collectively as a group one thing about VR's history. Let's figure out together what we would change. So one thing to change in VR's history, but we have to agree on it. And that's
Okay,
I disagree.
I'm gonna pitch something. I want to
Yeah.
wait. I
Okay,
want to
okay,
pitch
okay.
something. I
Fire
feel
away.
like we should have started standalone and then moved to PC VR as the upgrade from standalone versus feeling like you're going from PC VR and you have to choose between portability and high graphics. Like I feel like the mentality would have been a little different had you
Oh
gone
boy.
from console to PC.
I'm with you, Adam.
console.
I'm with you from a different angle that people are gonna hate. I don't know if I should even voice this.
Do it, Jose. Rip off the band-aid.
Oh man. Oh man, I don't know if I should say this. Well, like fuck it. I think that what hurt the VR industry has been a little bit of too much praising of former people that didn't really have any vested interest in the VR industry at all. I think that we are, yeah, I think I want to keep it there. I think that we championed, are continuously championing the wrong veterans and champions of the VR industry.
As in the accolades are not going to the right people. Like we're not
Yeah,
putting wind into the sails of people who are actually carrying the ship forward.
100%. Making
All right.
one of the ones that I can say prominently is Carmack becoming the CTO of Oculus. I think that definitely hurt. I think Carmack is an incredible bright mind, but I think that when you kind of put really smart people for the technology talking for the mainstream, I think that ended up with what Adam just said, that we ended up kind of flipping, the industry growth a little bit.
Okay, so we got 2 pitches. Anton, Rowdy, which one?
I'll go last.
Okay, yeah. I usually play that trick. Go on.
I mean, to continue on that point, because I think it goes a little bit from what I brought up earlier, where you often see a progression of games going to next new system or the bigger system. You saw with the Game Boys, and like they often upgrade. Well, here we went from something that is pretty much has, for the gaming at least, has finite resources, but much bigger than what you can do on a standalone device. But at the same time, we're progressing, at least to some extent, to more like a cloud environment. Cloud gaming is becoming more and more popular. Stadia tried it. Stadia failed. Maybe in the next future, when they solve some more of those latency problems, then we see that go, and we go back to that PC kind of realm. But I don't fully agree on that. It hurt the industry. I don't think it hurt the industry that we went with PC first and then went standalone, because I think a lot of people got excited because of the potential that you had. And back then there wasn't. I mean, you had mobile chips, but they couldn't do, at that point at least, what the Quest 2, the Quest 3 can do now. So yeah, I'm not fully. I get it.
So what would you change, Rowdy? Because that's what would you change about VR's history? Yeah, if you want to think on it in a minute, you can.
I think I would change the type of games that we started out on. We got a lot of the same type of games. While I would have liked to see maybe more of a variability. Even to this date, the majority of the games are very similar. There's not a lot of variability in that, and maybe that the thing you need to change is get more money to very creative developers.
Yep.
Maybe.
Yeah. I like that harkens me back to, although Anton himself is creating a gun game, and there's a lot of gun games out there, and there's a lot of zombie games out there. Your pick being Walkabout speaks volumes for that concept of maybe the initial seeds in games could have been something else. So Anton wanted to go last, so I'll go next. I don't know if this is cheating it, but I believe vehemently about not changing history. So the Genie, I would say, Genie, put your feet up, go grab a pint, have a good time. I'm good, because I really feel like where we've been and the lessons we learned and the mistakes we've made and all of that.
But
is
no,
but
that's not fair, Zim. If you're saying if there's mistakes you could correct.
Yeah, but again, it's still, I still think that's part of the story. If you made that mistake the first time, you'd make it if you press the reset button again, because you have to learn that lesson. You have to figure that out.
But the thing is that, the question is, of course, that knowing what you know now, what would you change about the past, right? So knowing what you know now about the virtual reality industry, what would you change? You wouldn't take anything away. You would just say, this point I would change.
I think based on what Zim is saying, Zim is saying everything then. Everything must be changed or nothing at all.
Yeah, I feel like we're on a carousel, and if you go around again, it'd be the same story. I do. That's kind of my opinion on the matter. I like the idea of fixing one thing, but I also believe very much in the butterfly effect. And you change that one thing, the outcome could be far worse, far better, just a very different universe. It's it's literally the concept of parallel universes, and I don't know. I kind of reject that, honestly. I reject that. I think that the path that we're on is the path that we're on, and we need to stick to it and own it and make tomorrow better every day. Even if yesterday was fucked up, just find a way to make that better. So, Anton, you get the baton next. What would you
Yeah,
want
I
us
mean,
to
like
change?
this to take this thought experiment far too seriously. It's a difficult one for me because like this medium and how things have gone like literally saved my life in that like I actually had some money for the first time in my life, and so like wasn't ignoring like I always did a set of like dental problems that I always had that in fact were like a catastrophic infection that would have killed me about 24 to 48 hours later if I had waited any longer to get to an oral surgeon.
Wow.
And so if I pull a thread out, it's likely I'm not alive right now if things go differently. But taking it to like the most impactful thing that I would change is I would probably just like not cause the Facebook acquisition to occur in the first place so that Palmer Luckey doesn't get enriched and goes to make a company that makes drones to just kill people the world abroad with. Like
Yeah.
that would probably be the like single largest positive change for the world thing that I would change about VR.
Yeah.
I want to see, that's the answer I wanted to give, but it goes to show to what I mentioned about the right people being championed in the VR, because if that's where Palmer went, right? It means that VR was going to go that direction anyways, based on his mindset and direction. So where we are now, especially if you listen to like Palmer's interviews, he talks about all the time. He's like, oh, I have most people in VR now in my company than I ever did when I worked at Meta or Oculus, and people don't stop to go like, that's concerning. You know what I mean? So I think that I would agree with that, but I think that we would still, I don't know, maybe we would have seen like Andor becoming what Oculus is today. You know what I mean? Or vice versa. If he
Maybe
was kept,
maybe
they
that
would've-
headset, the Sword Art Online headset that detonates and takes your head
Yeah,
off. Like
literally.
maybe that would have been
That's what the guy's
Dude.
into.
instead of
Yeah.
Quest.
It's
we
the
get
Oculus too.
Yeah.
Oculus Rift Cerebral Edition. Very good. I got a feeling we're not going to be able to settle between us on this. So if there's one more thing out of chat, then Rowdy, as I said, this is all very experimental, this podcast. Maybe one more thing out of chat if there was any debate point for the group.
Yeah, it was just one more thing that I just thought was funny, and I wrote it
Alright.
down. It was Arcane Mage, who said, because we were talking about H3 VR, and there's so many different games in there, and he said H3, dare I say, metaverse, which I thought was kind of funny. It's kind of funny. The metaverse, the
Oh, there we go.
metaverse.
Metaverse.
Yeah, you got a name for it already.
I like that.
Coin it.
Well,
I
we
can't
have
remember. Zim, you had actually been earlier setting up a question for me, and I can't remember what the context of it was. But I
Oh,
felt
this
like
was
there
about
a dangling thread.
Yeah, so what that thread was, thank you for remembering. I am renowned for doing exactly that, going on a tangent and never coming back. So that was about, while I was playing the new mode that you just dropped for Taken Hold, and I'm going to get it wrong. Can you tell me what it was? It's an I?
Institution.
The Institution. Yeah, feels very kind of Half-Life-esque actually inside the building and all that, and really awesome feeling. Doesn't handhold you. The part where I failed was because I've been so long away from H3 VR, I had no idea how to pick things off the ground. And unfortunately, my boundary system was such that anytime I dropped a mag or a gun, whatever, it was on the ground and I couldn't get it. So in my ingenuity, I took the melee weapon generally, which would be nice and long or whatever, and would shimmy it over for about an hour or two on stream here, and then like get it to go vertical just enough that I could pick it up. And after 2 hours of me struggling like that, because chat knows I don't like spoilers, I like to work things out for myself. They're like, you can just press this button and this trigger, and you'll be able to pick the thing off the floor. And so I suppose my challenge back was kind of like just thinking about VR systems as we evolve toward commonality and intuitiveness. My question was, had you considered just kind of the grab, the force grab that's present in multiple games now? Because 2 buttons to me, being essentially a new person. Oh, there's a turn on switch?
There's a Half-Life, like right after Half-Life Alyx came out, I and like 3 other devs were like, let's just add that as an option. But I didn't want it necessarily on as default, because it's like, even more magical sort of thing. But yeah, you can turn on, it's called gravity. It's like Alex style gravity grab you can turn on, and it just like, it's not as how to put it, like Alex, when you go to grab and fling something, like it will always lerp it to your hand. It's 100% reliable. H3's doesn't. I do a bunch of ballistics calculations and like fling the object at you for a correct arc, but you still have to catch it fairly. Like I cheese the catch radius a little bit to make it easier to catch. But if you fling it to the left or the right a little bit, it will actually, you've got a little more control, but it's easier to fail. But that is
good to know. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for remembering that.
That's this is in part of the downside of doing an open development game, where every time someone would suggest something in the first year, I'll be like, I can add an option for that. This is like 100 some options. There's so many ways to configure the game, and you might not know something is there, or you might not know that something can be configured. And a lot of people don't really enjoy crawling through options menus.
Yeah, I actually struggled with some of the. I was looking for kind of like smooth turn in the mode I was in, and just one quick comment about Institution and that update. Man, I played it for like 2 or 3 hours on the first character selection. Got back to the main menu, tabbed through the various character options, and I'm like, "There's 10 more games equivalent in here than what I just experienced." I'm like, "Come on, Anton, what do you expect to get?" I love it. I'm glad it's there, but God damn, it's so much for a player. You really are building a game for, as I said, multiple years of use for the end user. So I appreciate that. Hats off. It's really cool.
Definitely play the well done free meat character. It's my Half-Life parody in it. It's got like parodies of the Half-Life like Metro Cops that are all like cracking all sorts of jokes about the Half-Life series and stuff. And they've got like the riot batons, and there's little like
Oh my God.
there's little
Sounds awesome.
there's bread crabs that are like
Bread crabs.
hamburger rolls that like drop around, and they still attempt to like attach to your face and then like
Wow.
drill into it. It's fun.
Is that separate from? I saw there was like a Gordon-esque like main character. Is the selection of the enemies?
So for a take and hold character, when you're picking it, what you are selecting is the starting weapons, the pools of weapons that can appear, and the enemy progression for it. And so some of them will have modern enemies, some will have World War II style enemies. There's a Wild West one called Cow Wiener Calico that's all like late 1800s guns. And then under Meme-tastic Meats, there's a bunch of parody ones. So there's Flaccid Snake, which is the MGS parody one that's got those styles of enemies, as well as 6 bosses that are parodies of those bosses. They're super tanky. And then there's the well done free meat one, which is my like Half-Life parody.
Oh, badass.
And this is what I mean. If it was one game, I'd feel like I could take that. But thank you.
And I recorded like 200 lines of dialogue just for like the Half-Life enemies. And then like my sound designer to like process them so they all have that like Metro Cop like talking through the radio voice sort of thing. But it's me doing like a sausage voice version of a Half-Life enemy.
That's beautiful. It truly is. Okay, so with that, I know we've gone on for donkey's years here now, maybe the longest one we've done. Next up, we have game releases with our renowned curator and content pushing partner. So, Jose, what should the misbehaved lads and lassies out there crack into to keep them out of trouble this holiday season?
All right, so not a lot of releases for the next 2 weeks. So I got 2 games here that kind of a lot of people are not mentioning quite a bit, but they look pretty interesting. So the first one I have is Tiger Blade. Unleash your inner assassin / enemies, chase a legendary tiger cub, and survive a neo-noir adventure set in an alternate Korea. So it's a PSVR 2 game. It's optimized with all of the haptics that the PSVR 2 carries. That's releasing on December 20th. There's no price yet. But what stood out to me was something that I bet Anton would appreciate is really good audio design in the trailer. I don't know. I haven't played the game yet. So I don't know if that continues on through the gameplay. But, you know, standard VR, nothing very...
Robo Recall, I would say, in terms of
very Robo Recall, yep.
Okay, and you're
Well,
chasing a tiger cub? What, your lost kitten, basically,
I'm
or what?
guessing so. I
Yeah.
guess that you're chasing your tiger cub, and you're slaying down whoever you need to get it back.
I do
So
like that
really,
cell shaded kind of style always in
right?
games. Like especially in VR, it works well because I mean I don't know anything about rendering, but I'm assuming that it's computationally a little bit easier to do so without it making it looking crap. It had that cell shaded feeling. I often think.
Yeah, this is a really clean look. This is
Yeah.
an example of someone like working within within constraints,
Yeah.
in a way that doesn't feel like it's a compromise.
And on PSVR 2, we keep getting titles out that I just never heard of, and they just drop out of thin air. And meanwhile, some people are still complaining about not enough games on that system, and I have no more time for that
Nah,
comment
wait
anymore.
till the-
Well-
and so that's December 20th. I don't know if there's a PCVR announcement for it yet, but PSVR 2, December 20th. And up next, a second game that I'm very excited to talk a little bit about, Tales of the Aswang VR.
What?
I hopefully I'm not
What?
mispronouncing it. Tales of the Aswang.
I need to Google this.
Aswang
Maybe I
or
shouldn't.
Aswang, Aswang, Aswan. It's
I don't think it's pronounced that way, buddy.
I don't. Hey, I'm trying my
Aswang.
best here. It's a Tagalog word. It's a Filipino word.
This
It's
says-
yeah.
It literally says this.
I did it. I should have probably like asked how to enunciate this before I spoke about it.
It's fine.
But yeah,
fine, go.
but yeah, Tales of the Aswang or Aswang.
Aswang, according to
Aswang.
YouTube.
Aswan. Okay, so
Aswan.
Tales of the Aswan is a VR game that explores the myths and the epic creatures of the Filipino tradition.
Ooh.
So what's really interesting about this game specifically, it's been in development for the last 5 years. It's coming out on PC VR on December 20th also. I've been watching videos and kind of following up a little bit of the devlogs to talk about this, but it looks like it's been in development for the last 5 years. And most of the tales and folklores that these guys are making a game of don't even have source written materials. So these are oral stories that have been traditionally shared for generations.
Wow. Okay.
And instead of recreating it into a book, they were like, why not just make it into a game? So these are, a lot of years of development, making sure that it's culturally, aware of the stories or as accurate as they could possibly be. So that's releasing on December 20th. No price yet, but it is a Steam PC VR release. And those
That's
are the two
cool.
games.
I like those kind of things that are like a little bit more out of the box.
Yeah.
They're doing something different from like what traditional, game development probably is. Yeah, I like that.
Well, it's from the Steam page. It looks like it's a thesis project from
Yeah.
someone at the
There we
Parsons
go.
School
There
of
we
Design.
go.
So
100%. And that's the exciting part, because when you see it on the trailer, they're using hardware that we discard now as not being a mainstream. They're using Vive Pros, I think, or original Vives on the trailer. So that means that they're testing and developing this on older hardware. So the fact that this is a true passion project as a thesis that's being released is really exciting for what the future of these kinds of games will be.
Nice.
Good man.
Cool.
I always let you pretty much always have something that surprises me, and certainly this was this was no different. And it's funny because I do pride myself on knowing what's coming out, but you bring us stuff that I've not seen before.
That's
I wanted to
what
give you guys
man.
I appreciate it, Jose. Good curation job, man. I did want to update you guys on something quickly. Some of you will have seen this on my feed in that, but it's a project that I care a lot about, which is Gibby's Guide. Came out with a $20 Amazon full color print book. And this thing is the best bathroom reader for a VR person. So 20 quid, you can get that shipped to you, even in like Amazon Malaysia. I checked. All the Amazons have it. I find it really cool. Like, just have something, a physical volume that you can go through and ogle what I'm going to play next. So if you don't know Gibby's Guide, check that out on Amazon.
Does it have a cutoff date? Like, is it all 2023?
This is the 2024 edition. It was published
Wow.
the 1st of December. So this is they basically push this out every, I don't know if it's monthly, but it's like 6 weeks or 12-week cycles. He does an update, and so he started. This is the first inaugural like annual edition. but it's a nice like inch thick tome. And some of the shots, some of the just the pictures in there are like, it's like, how did you get that like key art? I'm trying to look for a good example here, but it's been a lovely guide. I mean, just stuff like that's Light Brigade, for example. Just things in there that I love artwork when it comes to stuff like this, and it's a nice little like coffee table book for not too much money. Get a quick paperback. And I had one other thing that I had to mention before we kind of head towards the tailing end of this. It didn't come up earlier. I was going to ask us about, or I did ask us about our various favorite VR games. The news bite that we got during the Game Awards that was quite shocking, and now has a video stemming from it for 10 million views, is essentially the Hello Games, I call it sequel to No Man's Sky in a fantasy world called Light No Fire, which was announced live during the Game Awards. If you haven't checked out the trailer or seen it yet, obviously 10 million of you have. Or maybe that's just one guy who's really interested in doing it on repeat like me. But this game really shows the DNA of No Man's Sky, but brought on a fantasy world. And it's essentially doubling down on the technologies they've built through No Man's Sky to make that a possibility, looking kind of at Starfield, giving it the two-finger salute and saying, you know what, we're going to double down and we're going to give you Earth. So we're going to give you an Earth, a fantasy Earth with, rideable dragons, explorable oceans, but literally a place that you can explore. And
did you see the tweet from Sean Murray that I pulled up that he made?
Okay, Sean, don't overpromise. Just say we've been working on something and show some clips. And what did he say, Rowdy?
I'm making Earth. And then
he was trying so hard. He was trying so hard not to contextualize it that way. He's like, I don't want to promise too much, as you know, but we're making Earth, and people, what?
And then
he
just like retweeted that, or he showed a picture of that, and he wrote above it, "Fuck."
Poor guy, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I wonder if it will borrow too heavily from No Man's Sky in terms of that DNA, right? Just in terms of what you're seeing. But I'm hopeful. I mean, it's a studio who's turned things around. Of course, No Man's Sky VR and PSVR 2 is my favorite. There is no confirmation at this point that it's going to be. Sorry, 1 second. I gotta make sure my cat doesn't turn the fucking computer off. Someone let the cat down here.
Incredible! If your cat knows how to turn off your PC, feed me now.
There's an upward-facing power button, and unfortunately, she's done it to me twice now. I locked her out, and my wife let her in or something. Or one of the kids did, so I have to be careful because she likes to put her foot right there, and you'd see me disappear.
And so building closure around that.
That's the end. Yeah,
but the cat's getting smarter too. You mentioned earlier that you care about your save files, so next up, your cat's going to learn how to delete your save files if you don't give it attention. So
log into my cloud saves and sort stuff out. So yeah, I just wanted to mention it in case anyone had missed it in passing. Didn't watch the Game Awards, didn't see the kind of notes about it. We did also get a sequel to Thumper called Thrasher, which looks really sick as well. And so those are two things for VR. Well, one for VR and one, fingers crossed, toes crossed, that we'll get Light No Fire in VR,
and of course,
well,
Rockstar.
The most exciting.
Yeah, Rockstar is making
World of Goo 2.
World of Goo. Oh, I mentioned that. Yeah, I didn't mention that now because it's not VR, but man, World of Goo 2 coming back on scene is super cool.
And we have
screaming at my screen.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we also have Rockstar, who, like Anton mentioned before, who's of course making no VR game. Who came out with the
GTA 6 and the crazy Florida man,
ready to capture everyone's.
I'm ready.
I hope no one else is planning to live off of a game they released that year, given that, like, what is it, like, statistically speaking, the average gamer has about like $125 a year to spend on video gaming. And when GTA 6 comes out, it plus the Game Pass subscription are just going to hoover up all the spare money across the market. You're gonna have entire market segments just die.
My apartment shows up in the trailer of GTA 6, which is one of the it is one of the most surreal and exciting things to ever experience in a video game trailer. It's like, oh, that's awesome. That's my I recognize. It's like, oh no, that's you know, and there's some studios here in Miami, like the AX Labs studio actually shows up in it too, and stuff like that. It's like, oh man. So that's
Yeah, I think I saw an ex-girlfriend on the roof of one of those cars. But
Hey.
anyway,
And then, and then we had the
so-
whole array of tweets saying, imagine this in VR.
oh, it's
I
coming.
know, I know. I really hope they do. You know, at some point do that for us because they've already done it for LA Noire, and that was a successful little project. I hope. All right, chat. Well, thank you very much for being with us today, for making the live show. The podcast runs on a fortnightly loop, and I, you know, we're here every other Saturday, YouTube and Twitch. We're live 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, and 6 p.m. in the UK. And you know, we're here to fill your ears with nattering, give our take on the world of VR and MR. We have an audio publication too. That's iTunes, SoundCloud, and Spotify. Rowdy does a great job, you know, cleaning that version up, so we can replace the voices you have in your head. Cheers for us, Anton, for being with us for this special episode. Our first
Thanks.
guest with this crew as well. Thought it was
Thanks
a
for
good
having
chat.
me.
I'd love to sword fight again sometime. That was nice and that was nice and
Anytime.
energetic. And just a reminder to our fans, right? We're gonna have the next session on December 30th. That's gonna be an FReality Christmas special. We typically pull in Slido for an annual roundup. These like word poll visions. We've been doing this for many years now, maybe 4, maybe 5, to pull in the audience's polls and take a collective like thumbprint on VR, what people's favorite things were and all that, give our games of the year and stuff like that. So we'll wait around and hopefully 2 weeks from now, after Christmas, you guys can join us for that. So
One
with
final
that,
thing. One final
Adam?
thing. Sorry, I
Adam?
promised Sampler that I would have Anton answer this question. He was just want to know what the rail shooter that you talked about, the early prototype version, was called.
Oh, it was just called the Escape. It was never publicly released because it worked so proprietarily towards that. But
That's what
if
I
you, if
figured.
I believe if you dig through my Twitter, it might be possible to find the one. I don't have the game anymore. I have like one. Yes, yeah. If Rowdy, if you wanted
Rowdy.
to show the picture of it.
Hmm.
Let me.
good call.
Up.
And we have this the other thing that is coming up, Meatmas. What's happening on the 25th? People should log in. I'm just wondering where, you know, let's direct people.
Yeah, just basically jump. It's obviously there'll be a big update on that day. I tend to set it live very early in the morning, like 12:30 a.m. on Christmas Day, so that it's actually Christmas, like everyone gets to try it on Christmas, so I don't like screw over Australia and such with it. But yeah, and just like load into the game and jump right into the snow globe scene.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So
That's
happy,
cool.
so excited.
Nice. I got
But yeah,
your tweet as well.
I sent the tweet to Rowdy. That's the one. That's a picture of young Anton. You can see a CRT in the background there of me standing in front of a projection screen, holding the two controllers. I'm like two-handing the minigun at a ship coming in, firing me at
In
me.
the
So
Escape. Yeah. Well, that's a cool piece of VR's history then. Wow. Well,
That's
a very merry
amazing.
Meatmas to everyone. Anton, again, tip the hat, and thanks very much. Everyone else, we'll see you on the next FReality podcast.
Take care.
wonderful.
Bye.